so they might be arriving late, but I'm working on the basis that they will be attending. Apologies for absence. I've got Shafiq, Christine Joy, Richard Parker. At the moment, as I said, Emma, lovely to see you, Emma. Yeah. Can I wish you all Happy New Year, those I haven't seen individually? Nice to see you. Happy New Year to everybody. Any declarations of interest? Different? No, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting on the 6th of November. Are they all okay? Take silence to be sent. And anything in the action log people want to pick up? Thank you. We have a storytelling, and they're all online as I understand it. Is that right? Yeah. Katie, Izzy, and Kelly. Katie, do you want to do the introductions? Hi, Katie. You're right. You're going to do the introductions and start us off. Is that all right?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
that's
Let me
great.
hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Piers. So we're delighted this morning to have Izzy Farmer with us. You hopefully have all read the paper, which was expertly written by Izzy. So thank you for that, Izzy. We've also got Kelly Glover with us, who is going to give you a bit of things from her perspective. She's helped get Izzy here today as well. Izzy is going to talk about how she's really benefited from the South Yorkshire Learning Disability and Autism Children and Young People's Key Worker Service, and give us a bit of insight into her story. Izzy's also an Oliver McGowan trainer. And obviously, board members will know what Oliver McGowan training is, but I just wanted to make sure for members of the public that might be in attendance, we just gave a bit of an overview of that. So the Oliver McGowan training on learning disability and autism is named after Oliver McGowan, whose death shone a light on the need for health and social care staff to have better training. The Health and Care Act 2022 introduced a statutory requirement that regulated service providers must ensure their staff receive learning disability and autism training appropriate to their role. The Oliver McGowan mandatory training is the standardised training that was developed for this purpose and is the government's preferred and recommended training for health and social care staff. And what we've done in South Yorkshire is really exciting piece of work because it's a co-produced piece of work. So people with learning disability and autism have helped develop the training and they help deliver it as well, which is what Izzy does. So I'll pass you over to Kelly now. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Kelly Glover. I'm the Learning Disability and Autism Portfolio Director, for those who don't know me. So when I was asked about bringing someone to talk about their experiences today, Izzy came into my head straight away. Firstly, because she's inspired me and many others, and I know she's going to inspire you this morning after you hear about her experience. Secondly, because it gives us the opportunity to showcase the great work of our South Yorkshire Learning Disability and Autism Key Working Service, the brilliant work they do, more importantly, the impact that they have, but also just to let people know that we're currently expanding that service to an all-age service in South Yorkshire, which is really exciting that we've been given this opportunity with additional funding to do that. Thirdly, it gives me the opportunity to make that plea around the Oliver McGowan, and thank you, Katie, for explaining that. So I'll not go into that. And Paula, Oliver's mum, articulates that story so beautifully. So please do listen to Paula's story around that. And also, I appreciate that it's really difficult to free our staff up in these really challenging times. But again, where we can kind of make sure that they're accessing that training, I promise it will make a difference to the staff. And finally, and I promise this is my last point before I hand over to the wonderful Izzy, employment is such an important thing in all our lives. We know that it's really difficult for our autistic and learning disability population to access employment, but also to maintain employment. So again, there is a real plea that as anchor organisations, we must lead by example to try and provide these opportunities, but to also include them in any of our plans, any of our strategies, to ensure that, you know, we can really, you know, make sure that employment is part of their lives as well. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Izzy, who's going to tell her story now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Katie, she's just joining now, so.
Thanks, Kelly. Sorry.
Izzy, I've just introduced you, so do you want to tell your story now, please?
We're just going to
Hi,
share the
welcome.
screen, if that's okay.
And
Yeah,
obviously introduce yourself as well, Lisa and Izzy.
Okay, should we introduce ourselves first?
Yeah, let's do it.
You go first then.
Hi everyone, I'm Izzy Farmer, 20, and I'm from Doncaster.
Hi, I'm Lisa Coe. I'm one of the children and young people's key workers. So I'm here supporting Izzy today. So we're going to share our screen so Izzy can, she's got some notes, but she'll talk to you as well.
great. Thank you. Yeah, we can all see that. Thank you.
Over to you.
Yeah, wonderful.
When you're ready.
Yeah.
So in terms of my story, I suppose the journey began when I first turned 13. I lost a parent and a home, and everything changed. It became so much darker. I didn't have ambitions. I didn't have dreams. I didn't see a world that children normally see, bursting with colour and opportunity. All I saw was the same darkness, just day after day. A darkness that not only lasted, but grew with my age. Then at 16, I enjoyed my first section, but all I knew was that I couldn't leave a room. No one was there to answer my questions. No one explained. I was just alone. Then at 18, I was sectioned again. I had nothing. And because of my upbringing, I'd never been led to see a life past age 18. And it was during my stay in this particular acute mental health ward that I was met with an assortment of obstacles and challenges that made progress or understanding very difficult. I felt lost, like moving forward was useless. There was no future for me. I didn't understand the world that I was lived in. I was just lost in the dark. Whilst I was an inpatient, I was over-medicated, misunderstood, and left without any appropriate treatment plans or support. This in itself left me in a very vulnerable state, as I did not really know what was occurring or how to make anything better. I tried and I tried, but it seemed to be completely meaningless. Everything was communicated in complex terms and in paragraphs upon paragraphs of information that I could neither understand or take in. All of this, alongside being over-medicated to the point of being drowsy, confused, and frightened, all of the time stripped me of anything soothing and left me isolated and completely out of routine. Yet each time I expressed these thoughts or any seemingly challenging behaviour was noted, the dosage of medications only increased or was forced upon me in a much stronger basis, making me question whether these medications were present for my own benefit or just to keep me calm, quiet, compliant, and easy to manage, almost as if it was simpler to shut the problem up instead of listening to it or dealing with it. Everything I've noted here was just my day-to-day life on this ward. I had no plans, a complete lack of understanding, and felt like a waste of time and space, as no one would stop and explain things. No one would stay with me. No one could understand my differences in communication or sensory needs. I suppose this led to me falling into darker and darker places. I felt like giving up. I felt like I was unwanted, and I felt completely out of touch with everything. Even the simplest aspects of life, everything from a simple walk outside became a luxury, and even being granted basic privacy became a celebration. Well, this was before the team around me finally started to look at my presentation as a whole and understand some of the behaviours or traits I exhibited. An assessment was carried out, and at 18, I was officially diagnosed as autistic. This diagnosis, truthfully, was hell to begin with. I hated it. I didn't understand myself. And in childhood, I had been taught over and over that being autistic was the worst thing a person could be. So due to my mentors, I feared it. I feared it completely. So how could I accept this diagnosis within myself? However, having this diagnosis and being in hospital allowed me to be added to the dynamic care register, which I suppose in itself might seem meaningless, but it allowed me to be assigned a pathway coordinator, and her name is Lisa Cow.
Just a minute. What have I done? Oh, well.
So going through some of our achievements, I suppose I'll start from when we first met. Well, when we met, I was in segregation most of the time on a PQ, and I was just told somebody wanted to meet me and somebody wanted to help. I mean, this in itself was a complete unknown for me. Even the language, somebody wanted to, not somebody had to, they wanted to be there. I mean, I sat in a room expecting just another person to shout at me or demand answers from me. I expected nothing, to be put simply. Even on the way in, I heard others say, she won't look at you, or she won't do this, she won't do that, she won't listen. This wasn't a surprise. I mean, at this point, I was completely used to the language and expected it from the world. No one had ever demonstrated any different, and because of my life, I saw this darkness in all who approached me. There was nothing left to believe in. Yet, instead of leaving after seeing my presentation, she came in and sat down, already showing me she wanted to be there. She wanted to try. These actions may seem small to you, but to me, it began to provide me with the hope that I thought was completely lost. Maybe I was a little more hopeful than I should have been, but instead of demanding openness from me, she wanted to get to know me. Lisa respected my boundaries and seemed to genuinely understand my hesitation and fear. After this meeting, I was used to healthcare professionals taking over things or attempting to steer my life in an unwanted direction. But instead, Lisa listened to me and was patient and allowed me to communicate in the ways that worked for me. This trust and rapport was not rushed either. Instead of being demanded in a day, it was built up in a time that allowed me to feel comfortable, but kept me striving for goals in an appropriate time too. Since this first meeting, we have achieved more than I ever dreamed was possible in life. In fact, I think we continue to push the boundaries of what is possible. I mean, some of the highlights for me are Lisa first supporting me to understand what it means to be autistic, the fact that I did not need to fear the word and it was just another part of me, a part I had to learn to embrace. These lessons led to the creation of a still very important document in my life. This document, named Autism and Me, has allowed any professional I have worked with to understand my life, my reactions, and me without further stress or miscommunications. Honestly, it's been a big part in my recovery. This guidance and support has helped shape me into the individual I am and has allowed me to accept myself, better myself, and understand myself. Without these moments, I believe I would not have been able to move forward and would not be here, proud of my quirks, proud of my autism, and proud to be Izzy. In the long term, I've carried these lessons and reflections as they have allowed me to become more independent, build better relationships, and most importantly, has allowed me to make the right decisions myself and take back control of my life. A life I now not only want to live, but I want to thrive within. So I'm currently employed as an autistic expert by experience and peer support worker at Speak Up Self Advocacy. And Lisa has actually been massively involved in supporting me to get this job. She sent me the original email, supported me with my application, and even corresponded with the hospital I'm staying at to allow them to understand the therapeutic value this job holds and how it would help me grow in the future. Lisa has even supported me in setting up and maintaining travel links to and from work. But most of all, as silly as it sounds, Lisa just believed in me. All the way through the application and up to my first day, she made sure positive links and safety nets were established, but in a way that would not prevent my growth. but allow me to thrive in a workspace that I felt comfortable in. I know it sounds silly, but to have the ability to learn from someone's experience and use that to grow as a person yourself, those lessons, those moments can never be overstated in value. And of course, I love the job I have. Because of it, I've spoken at conferences, led teams, and had the honour of meeting so many incredible, brave individuals. Some of those individuals are the reason I wanted to make today's presentation go so well. I want to be able to express just how far I've come and how far anyone can go with the right support package. I really believe the support Lisa and others in her job role give may be difficult to explain, but can never be replaced in importance and value. I mean, because of it, I have a life, a job, I have hope, dreams, and most of all, I have the determination in myself to seek out and embrace new opportunities and adventures, something that dwelled within me but I was never taught or encouraged to express. So, life without Elisa. Without Lisa, I can honestly say my life would have taken a much darker turn. I wouldn't have the knowledge I have that allows me to ground myself and take on new challenges. I would not have learned to accept and respect myself for the person I am. I would not be able to communicate what I need to others and would, well, still be trapped in segregation with nothing that allows me to feel a connection to life. I would have no job, no connections, and no understanding. With this, alongside all that Lisa has done and taught me, I can say Lisa has saved my existence and supported me so I can turn it into a life. I mean, just look at my past compared to my present. She has empowered me at every turn, allowing me to make better choices. All in all, I don't think her role is given the credit and admiration it should do. I mean, communicating with every different part of a service, like no matter how complex and how frustrating it can get, allowing others to connect and doing it all for the best interest of the service user. How many people can say that they're so selfless? They do all this and so much more, but they do it with a smile. I'm glad I've had the opportunity not just to share my journey and progression, but to express how much I admire and look up to this compassionate, genuine, and heroic individual. So I hope this has given you all a much needed look into the service and what it provides. I mean, it's changed my life and my outlook on life. I've come through this service broken, but now stand tall, willing to fight for what's right and support others who cannot voice their opinions whilst helping them to learn how to do so. Thank you for your time and thank you for this opportunity.
Izzy, that was brilliant. Can I first of all say, Izzy, you were great.
You got a clap.
That was an utter delight and you were brilliant. So genuinely, at least great credit to you, Lisa. Really, I've never heard a reference like that by anybody. I mean, I'd like someone to write a reference for me about like that, because that was the best reference I'd heard. You should be extraordinarily proud of what you've done, Lisa. Truly should be great. Any points the board want to make? I'm just going to open it to the board, okay? There might be some questions or just some statements. Okay, Lisa.
Oh, thank you. My name's Lisa Phillip. I'm a GP and I also work for a charity that supports people with autism called Sparkle Sheffield. So first of all, thank you for being brave enough to come and present your story. It was, you know, heartfelt and I know it's resonated with all of us. Sadly, we hear this all the time from people at the charity and the way they're treated just because of a label of autism is just unbelievable. I think it's great that you've got this support and someone saw that potential in you and has unlocked that. And I think you're just a testament to what can happen when we step back and we actually listen to people and we respect their diversity and we support them because you've achieved so much. And as a person who's neurospicy myself, you can achieve anything. And I think you just need that support. So thank you. I think I will go and champion this again for you, and I think all of us will do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other points? Leslie. Wendy, then Leslie. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. Huge thanks, Izzy and Lisa. And wow, what's on my again across there in terms of your personal journey through the last months, probably years actually. You know, you really almost been so, I'm sitting here almost really welling up because actually your determination and your sort of collaboration, you two together, and Lisa, that stickability, I call it, I'm not probably not in the dictionary, but stickability and the importance of the key worker roles, walking actually, I call this word, walking alongside individuals like Lisa, and sometimes it's parents as well. That's fabulous feedback from parents as well that have talked about a really important role in the key worker support, because it rises above the specific service areas and walks behind the individual to navigate and connect and to challenge and to support and do all of those things that we would all want to have. We don't want Elisa walking beside us when time gets up in life. So obviously huge thanks, and I'm so pleased that we are only one of two places that are able to expand the scheme in England, are able to expand the scheme into supporting adults. So I should have introduced myself. I'm Wendy Lauder. I'm the place director in Barnsley, and I work closely with Shay on the learning disability and autism, along with great colleagues like my books that have been here today. So absolutely wonderful to be your journey involved in that. And I wish you the very best of luck for the next adventures.
Thank you. Leslie.
Thank you. Hiya, Izzy. Hiya, Lisa. I'm Leslie. I'm one of the non-executive members on the board. Thank you for your story. I'm echoing really what other people have said. I think for me, it just shows how important it is to get that right intervention at the time when you really need it. And how that just flips everything, like it flipped it for you, Izzy. It's stunning to see that story. I think the other thing I just wanted to reflect back on was the great work that Speak Up do. I know Speak Up from years of working in Rotherham, and I'm really glad, Izzy, that a person like you's got involved with them, because there's so much power in that of you going on to help other people who are in similar situations, and who's better to do it than somebody who's lived it. So well done on getting a job with them, and that's my best on to everybody. Thank you.
Anthony.
Thanks. Hi, Izzy, Lisa, I'm Anthony. I'm also from Donny. Thanks for your presentation. We're all very proud of you and the work that you've done. The point I wanted to make was just, isn't this what we're about really in terms of the work that we're doing? A lot of today's agenda might be about some of the difficult financial positions that we're in, some of the difficult performance issues that we're in. But if you look through the place reports of the work that's coming across all of our places, around the schemes that are there, around employability, about helping some of our vulnerable people, that's really what I feel we need to celebrate as we are and accelerate that kind of work. And it's about evaluating our success a little bit differently than what we might have done in the past, because that to me is success. And you know, that's what we should be looking at spreading, despite it being a very difficult climate that we're in.
I agree, Anthony. Damien, you wanted to come in. Welcome. Happy New Year, Damien, by the way.
Thank you, Piers. And Damien Allen, Chief Executive, City of Doncaster Council, so also part of the Donny posse. Izzy, go large. Listen, first of all, just to repeat what other colleagues have said, really impressive articulation of your story, and stories matter, I think. More than that, I think they're compelling in terms of encouraging others to come forward and tell their stories. So huge thanks for that. My point really is we're also, as Anthony's pointed out, really committed to co-production of services, and in particular adopting relational approaches to public service. Feels to me at the heart of the success of this story is the quality and the nature of the relationship between you and Lisa. And I feel, without wanting to probe any further, but it would be really helpful, I think, because I think talking about how the relationship has made the difference, I think is what can be the learning points for others. So a huge thanks, and yeah, again, really proud. Well done.
Thank you, Damien. Lee.
Thanks, Izzy, Lisa. That was absolutely great. I'm Lee Althwaite. I'm the Director of Finance. So I'm the miserable money man around here. So I've got something to do with where we spend the money in South Yorkshire. Lisa, it's a question for you, really, just about that key worker role and just unlocking people's intrinsic motivation for sort of self-care and their therapeutic journey. And sort of, it sounds like Izzy's doing great now, but there's a real balance, isn't there, around the sort of letting go, around Izzy's independence. We speak about Izzy like she's not there, for which I can only blooming apologise. But there's something isn't there, about you would hope our personalised care in all services found the whole person, wouldn't you? And you'd kind of go, crikey, if we need to compensate with a range of people who really find out what these motivating people, you're going to go, crikey, how did we get to here? But just your casework and the letting go, we could. It sounds like everybody could do with a Lisa, but there's only one of you. I could do one, I think, by the sounds of it. But how do you sensibly and healthily let go? And it's that balance between sort of self-care and duty of care. And how do we do that really elegantly in your experience?
In terms of the role, we've built up like a routine, so we knew what was happening from each other. And my involvement with it has always been to empower. It's never been to take over or to control. And we often get some comments like from the responsible clinician who says, "How do you get her to do that? Why can Lisa make you do things that we can't?" And it comes down to is actually I never ever have told Izzy what to do. What I've done is explained the situation in a way that she gets it, and then she makes those informed decisions. Because Izzy is very strong-willed, as you might have noticed today, and will do things that perhaps others don't understand. But when she understands the bigger picture, she's able to make those decisions herself. And I think for me, it's that empower. So I know, and I always say to any young person I work with, I will step away after you don't need me anymore, and you'll get rid of me first. And they say, "No, Lisa, I'll never be able to live without you." And quite quickly, like Izzy's currently transitioning into a supported living, she will then say, "Do you know what? I ain't got time for you anymore, Lisa. I've got my own life now." And I think that is how we can separate how our work ends, if that makes sense, because she won't need me anymore, because she will have those skills to carry it on herself.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Izzy. Thank you.
Really good. Gavin, do you want to just finish?
Yeah, just a final comment. Hi, Izzy, Lisa. I'm Gavin. I'm Chief Executive of NHS South Yorkshire. But just to say, Izzy, I thought your story was amazing. I thought the way that you kind of shared your experience, I think, was incredibly powerful. And Lisa, as well, your role in providing support, not only for Izzy but for others too. I think that the power of that came across really clearly. I just want to say that in the report that came, Izzy, that there are a number of recommendations. So amplifying the voice of neurodiverse people, ensuring that neurodiverse people are involved in planning processes, supporting the rollout of Oliver McGowan. I think just to say that I think that they seem eminently reasonable and sensible. So I think it's just to put on record that we will try and adopt those recommendations. I think one thing that really struck me though was the part of your story about your job and employment. And one of the things we know is there's a really close relationship between good health and a good job. And I just think your experience was just a tremendous illustration of that. We have got an item later on the agenda which is talking about work we could do in that space. And just to reassure you, there is a particular focus on supporting young people into work, but also young people who are neurodiverse, perhaps have a similar story to yourself, into a good job, because that's a critical part of that step forward. So I think it was just really just to thank you both for telling your story. It's not easy to come and speak to a group like this when you don't know them, but if you knew them, you'd be fine. So really appreciate you coming to tell the story. I think it was really powerful, and I can't think of a better way to have started the conversation we're gonna have this morning, because I think it really just puts it in the right context. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Look after yourselves.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree with you. It's a good way to start the meeting, wasn't it? Really good one. I haven't got anything on the chair's matters. Can we go straight forward to Chief Executive report? Gavin, please, if you don't mind.
Thanks.
Kevin, nice to see you, by the way.
Apologies for being
No, you explained it.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I'll be relatively brief. I mean, the report's there. I mean, obviously, I referenced things like the consultation around the 10-year health plan, but we've got a bit more detail coming later in the agenda, so I won't dwell on that now. I perhaps did want to draw out, I guess, another really significant strategic, steer from the government, which came out before Christmas, which is the white paper on English devolution. And again, we'll touch on that a little bit later in the context of 10-year health plan. But I think there's a couple of things to draw out from that. One, the proposal that the combined authorities would have a statutory duty around health and wellbeing, in addition to the existing responsibilities of the upper tier local authorities. So, signalling that, I think, was really important. But also the proposal that the combined authorities ought to work much more closely with the NHS, and particularly in relation to the integrated care partnerships, I think was really important to see. Now, obviously, that's a journey we've been on for a couple of years in terms of our integrated care partnership with the Mayor of South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority acting as chair. And actually, that arrangement was name-checked in the white paper and identified as a way forward. So I think it feels good that we're leading the way, and also that approach is being, I guess, receiving that affirmation in terms of its reference in the white paper. So we'll come back to that, but I do think that's a really important development. We've got an update. I've already touched on economic inactivity, and we've got an update later on in the paper. We're really delighted to see that South Yorkshire has been identified as one of 3 national trailblazers in response to the other government's recent white paper around increasing economic inactivity nationally, and obviously that builds on good work within South Yorkshire around things like the Working Wind programme that's been running for a number of years. We're one of the national Work Well pilots, and of course the Barnsley Pathways to Work Commission. So I think we positioned ourselves in a good place, and the benefit of that is we're seeing £18 million worth of investment coming into the local system to support people like Izzy into good jobs. So really good to see that. Lee will give an update on the financial position in the current year as part of the meeting today. I'm perhaps looking a bit beyond the end of this financial year into the planning process for 25-26. We've yet to see the national planning guidance. There was an expectation to be out for Christmas. I think there's further conversations taking place between NHS England and the Department of Health and Care. So we await that. I think we've had some clear steers. So for example, we saw the publication of the elective recovery programme yesterday, and the government have made some clear statements about returning to the referral to treatment target for elective care, for planned care, and an ambition to see that delivered by the end of this Parliament. And just to remind people of the standard, that's to treat people who are waiting planned care within 18 weeks from referral to the date of their treatment, and the target was 92%. It's likely that we'll see a sort of staging post. I think in the report yesterday it was around 65%. So there's some steers from the government. We are waiting to see the guidance. On the financial front for next year, I think it is worth noting that whilst it is absolutely true that the governments have prioritised additional funding for the NHS in the previous budget, I think as we work through the detail of that, I think it's also true that a considerable amount of that will be required to fund pay awards and national insurance contributions and those workforce and pay related issues, which are important. So the government stepping in and covering those, I think, is a really important step. But actually, in terms of additional funding for frontline services, I think it will feel like a very, very difficult operating environment with perhaps flat growth for frontline, or possibly less than that. So I think the financial operating environment next year will be even more challenging, I think, than the year that we're drawing to a close. I think it's important to note winter. I mean, Sarah will share a bit of detail in terms of operational performance. I think it has been a testing time. We've seen a spike in influenza nationally, plus other respiratory related viruses such as RSV and COVID. So I think it's been a really challenging time, both in primary care for the ambulance services, and obviously for the acute hospitals as well. But I think our planning and focus on vaccination has put us in a good position. It has been challenging. I think people have waited longer than we would have liked, both in terms of their time in ED and also in relation to ambulance handovers. So I think we have to acknowledge that. But when I look across the country and across the region, I think South Yorkshire has performed favourably relative to other systems, but it's not the level of care that we would wish to be providing local people, and that will continue to be a major focus of our transformation work. I think that's probably the key updates. Just a couple of parish notices, just to bring to everybody's attention that we've got some changes within the executive team at the ICB. So sparing Wendy's blushes, but Wendy is leaving us at the end of February, and we I think I'm really pleased with the appointment we've made jointly with Barnsley Council, because as you know, Wendy is as well as being executive director for the Barnsley Place as part of this board, she's also director of adult social care for Barnsley Council. So we kept that joint appointment, and we've made an excellent appointment in the form of Katie Calvin-Thomas, who's currently the chief executive of the Manchester and Trafford Local Care Organisation. So really good to see that. And then just to finish on some highlights, a couple of really terrific events to see over the last couple of months. One was the innovation showcase at the Olympic Legacy Party. We gave around 100 colleagues the opportunity to share their wares and the efforts they've been making in terms of using innovative practice to improve services. And I was also really delighted to attend I think it was the first anti-racist assembly within South Yorkshire. One of the key commitments we made as the Integrated Care Partnership was to seek to become an actively anti-racist health and care system, and coming together with partners from across the system to share progress, good practice, reaffirm that commitment. I think was really good to see. Just a couple of awards to mention. I was delighted that in the National Health Service Journal Awards, the Place-Based Partnership and Integrated Care Award, which is probably the main one I would say for ICBs, was picked up by South Yorkshire, but due to the work of the medicines optimisation team in Rotherham and the terrific piece of work they've done around supporting people to stay hydrated, particularly in care home settings. So it was great to see that picked up, and our local maternity and neonatal services were also recognised in the awards as a runner-up. So great to see that. And just to mention our own Stars Awards within the ICB, really happy to see Kate Woods recognised as one of our stars since the last meeting for her work with the Cancer Alliance, and also Sam Humphreys, also from our meds management team, and the work that Sam has been doing around asthma medication in young people, and really a really innovative piece of work. So good to recognise that as well. That's it for me, Chair.
Any questions for Gavin? Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. And the chief exec report notes the vaccination campaign. I thought it was just timely to mention that it's not too late for the flu jab, and any help we can get in still promoting that. We have I would say, a relatively successful campaign, particularly in areas such as vaccination of care homes, where we're the highest in the region, but certainly still pushing the message towards which ends on 31st of January, flu campaign, particularly for health and care workers, is something that I think we still want to promote.
Okay, good point. Okay, thank you for that. Sorry.
I was going to make the same point.
Damien, did you want to come in?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the report, Gavin, but my comment was really just to reinforce your comments around Wendy's leadership contribution across the system. From a a pioneering approach in terms of the joint role that she's played. She's led, I think, truly in the space that is integration of health and social care, but much wider across the whole place-based approach. So, you know, we have a bit of a mantra in Doncaster. We're fully committed to collaboration, but we healthily borrow from Barnsley so that we aspire to be better than them. And without the likes of Wendy to sort of gird us into that position, then we'll have to find an alternative mantra. But I wish her all the very best and thank her for a massive contribution and a system leadership across South Yorkshire.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Thanks, Gavin. We've got no more public questions, am I right? Thank you. Item 9, Board Assurance Framework Corporate Risk Register.
Thank you, Chair.
Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I will take the document and the appendices as read, but I will just highlight a number of things. So, firstly, the Board Assurance Framework, the risk register and issues like presented to the Board for review and approval. Principal risks are highlighted and the associated management action and review is also summarised in Appendix 1, and then in Appendix 2, which is aligned with our agenda, there is a focus on each of our strategic objectives where we illustrate the risks and issues that are the principal risks and issues that are aligned with each of the strategic objectives, and then the summary of review action is also included in that. And finally, I just ask the board to review and approve the BAF risk register and note the ongoing development of our BAF risk register with a particular view on system risk, which is inspired and to some extent led by our audit committee chair. So we'll just present that to the board.
Mark, thank you. Any questions from the board? Leslie?
Yeah, it's on SYO 28, which is really the oncology workforce. We did kind of see that really good piece of work and presentation about what was happening about stabilisation of that service and support for that. But I just wonder if we've got any plans to bring anything back about where we are in terms of has that worked first off, and also, you know, that was supposed to be an interim position, so what's happening next?
That question, we've got real concern here around it was breast oncology, if I remember rightly, but there was a broader problem as well. I think the position has stabilised, but can we formally report back to the board? I think that's worthwhile. I'm just wondering if we
I can bring people back. I mean, it has stabilised, but there's a lot more work to do because it's not just around breast. There's loads of issues around urology. It's a very fragile service, and we are doing some work to look at not just, you know, the next 6-12 months, but actually the next 3 years in terms of workforce. So Sarah and I met with key members of HPHD just to talk about that. We're all just waiting for things to happen. What is the workforce plan for the next sort of 3 years? So it's happy to bring something back.
I think it'd be good just if we could just get
we'll put that in appropriate time. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think let's be clear. We all know it bubbled up in breast, but this is a long-term workforce problem in a number of specialties, and I think it is absolutely right that we keep close looking at it very closely because this directly affects the services to our residents. So thanks for raising it, Leslie. We'll come back at an appropriate time. Anything else? Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just as on a relatively dry matter, I think it's good to know that our internal audit colleagues who are constantly by Mark and the team side, reporting to audit committee a much improved position on how we identify and manage mitigate risks. I think the focus has to turn to be very clear about what our broad risks are of concern to many of our committees if the numbers aren't improving. Now, that's not to call for a response at this meeting, but may be reflective of the overall position that the NHS and the care system finds itself in. So that is an underlying concern now, that the dial doesn't seem to be showing much improvement on the risk that we couldn't.
Agree. And I think our financial risk is significant. And Gavin's right, we haven't got next year, but it doesn't look to me as though it's going to be anything other than more difficult, more challenging. So we'll pick that up on this financial conversation. Thank you. Anything else? Mark, thank you for that. Can we move on to agenda item 10, health and care strategy number of issues now. Gavin, you're going to introduce or?
Yes, thanks. So, I mean, I've kind of touched on some of the headlines in my introduction. Anything further? But Mariana, do you want to pick up the updates?
The first update is in timeline for the organization. So they want the organization to respond by this individuals with a little bit longer to respond, and then we also might also population. Also and I think I was We're just working through what things look like. One of the areas where there was a high level synergy and how we was going lots of feature in which that there was an opportunity for us to and it may be it's likely that it will impact in the impact of guidance, yes. Is the and so we have inboard and anyway, on the now those so in context that we're and also
Thanks, Marianne. Marianne, thank you. Any questions for Marianne?
Hi, thanks, Brian. Very, very helpful. I'm just reflecting really on the relationship between strengthen that and create a stronger line of sight between the two.
Yes.
I know that a lot of colleagues around the table are both on the board as well. Bring our priorities a bit more closer together as well. That golden thread really important, the ICP.
I agree, Maureen. I'd go a bit further. We had a conversation with execs. If you look at the financial settlement next year for the NHS, looks very tight. I think the way we will make the biggest difference in our broader health issues will be working very differently with our local authorities and with the mayoralty. And there's clearly a real sense of wanting to evolve to the mayoralties across the country. We've got a real foot in the door there, and I think this is a real opportunity for South Yorkshire. And it might mean that we have to work in quite a different way, formally and informally, with the mayoralty. And I think that will be the way forward. And I think we should welcome that. And I think it's a conversation that over the next 6 months will be very live for this board and for the ICP. So absolutely welcome it. Wendy, then Lee, and then sorry.
The emotion bill starts to share deeds and making them get the biggest ones and means for this population across Yorkshire will, I'm sure, emerge. And just on the pain specifically, I just wanted to make a plea around these the journey that we ensure that through that we get an understanding of that the voice of people to speak are actually at the centre of all that and use to explain that alongside the learning disability in order to people needs and so a shared plea in terms of the conversation you're having in your place. Please make sure that you are reaching out to that. The other comments have been asked of the commission into practical social care, which recently announced to be led by Baroness Louise Casey, very much welcomed in terms of the companies and to get some cross political consensus on the future for adult social care. rather disappointed, I have to say. It's going to take some years to get some of that out. There's been so many reports about social care over the years. I've got your fingers to count the number of reports that have been produced about social care. But there's clearly that codependency. We all know this board. Between sustainability and social care and just by discharge, or indeed just being able to support people to grow and working in general. So just
Thank you.
Lee, I think it's probably more of a statement than a question. It's probably a sort of personal failure. I think I'm really struggling with how we're going to do operational planning for 25-26 in a more citizen-centric way as a vehicle for that sort of 10-year plan vision. It feels like something will arrive next week that will be quite NHS-centric. And I'm just trying to think through, if you think about Izzy's story, and if you think about what we're trying to do around a broader view of communities and citizen-centric care and how we would conduct that conversation through the ICP, I'm just really struggling with how the operational plan for next year will be year one in that 10-year planning cycle, because I think we'll be it could be a bit of a kind of gates inward exercise going, oh crikey, there's potentially not enough money and we need to do very specific things on elected recovery. I'm just trying to think about how will we elevate our thinking a bit to go, this feels a bit more like year one of a 10-year plan as opposed to year one of a 1-year operational plan for the NHS. And we perhaps need to have a bit of a think collectively as a board about how we face into that. I can't quite see a way through it personally, but that could just be me often.
Kevin.
Thanks, Chair, and thank Marianne for the paper. So it's building on a question that I asked a couple of meetings ago around the perfectly sensible statement in the paper in our response to the plan was the need for leaders to enable greater investment after hospital, blah, 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 which is absolutely right. But it got me to reflect again, what specifically do we think those levers need to be? That if us and our partners in South Yorkshire decided to do something different and faster, I think the conditions are that we need to, but we can't do ourselves anyway with the agreement of our partnership. So is there something specific in our, or is this really a call to arms of all of our partners to say, let's think differently about how we manage our resources?
And just to come back on that, I mean, I think both Kevin and Lee's questions are absolutely spot on. And I think, we need to, we do need to see the detail in the planning guidance, but I'm also conscious that planning guidance needs to sit within a clear direction of travel that we've heard from the government, which is around a greater emphasis on prevention, a greater emphasis on care out of hospital, and obviously the analog to digital. So I'm expecting within the planning guidance there to be some room to manoeuvre for us to make progress against that agenda. I think Mariana's point around, and a big takeaway from the strategic discussion we had with the system health leaders broadly in November was this issue about neighbourhood health and what does it mean and what's the NHS's contribution to it, because clearly it's much wider than just the NHS. It's about all of the factors which create good health within a neighbourhood. But I think that's got to be a critical part of the focus. But we'll see what the guidance is. But I think it would be extraordinary if it didn't provide room to manoeuvre in order for us to move in the direction which the government has so clearly set out.
Great. We haven't seen the guidance, have we? But everything I hear says that if we are going to make a real difference on the other issues, is working in partnership with our local authorities and with the mayoralty. If you look at, we talk later about the employment, we got extra money in because we worked differently. We had different and innovative proposals. That's what we're going to have to do. Because the NHS bit of this settlement it looks as though it's going to be really tight and very focused on waiting lists. I understand that politically, and I was talking to someone yesterday about this. We can moan about politicians giving direction and whether we agree with the direction. The price of a system free at the point of delivery, funded out of general taxation, is the politicians shape it. Actually, they go together. We've got to work within those constraints. But I think our real opportunity to act differently is to work differently with partners. The mayoralty and the devolution offers a real opportunity over the next 18 months that we've got to grasp. and that might mean we as a board have to operate quite differently. You know, it might look different in 12 months' time because of that. And I think we just have to welcome it.
Yeah, I just want to kind of reflect a little bit on what Andy and Lee were saying, just what you just picked up there. In a different capacity, doing some work with mayoral combined authority, looking at citizenship, co-design, co-production around policy, around kind of that wide strategic stuff. So in sort of kind of answering some of your thing there, yes, we've got the constraints around what the NHS can contribute, do and everything else, but actually it's not just about working differently, but it's accessing additional resources within that wider system to say, well, actually, if you're doing a whole piece around citizenship involvement, engagement around not just service delivery, but policy design, resource, what shaping resource differently. I think it's about thinking about how we can utilise some of that so that we don't have to duplicate it. So if there are other parts of the system doing the work, it's about sharing that information better, it's about sharing that information. I think that is where the real opportunity for us. Because as we recognise, South Yorkshire's got mentioned so many times in the devolution papers, so many times in different things. That's because we've taken that conscious decision to do it differently. I think what we've got to be mindful of is not falling into that trap of going, oh, we've got to keep the day-to-day lights on and not, keep sighted on actually, well, we've got to do it differently. What that?
I think that's a challenge. I agree. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for that. Really, really helpful. Can I move on to agenda item 11, which is the business case for quit? David.
So I'm going to do a very brief introduction. I'm joined today online by Dr. Lisa Wilkins, Leanne Sparks, and I see Jackie Mills has joined us as well. So you'll remember back in May of 24, I presented a paper on prevention, which included tobacco as an element of that. And following that meeting, the chair, chief executive, and myself signed up to the Ash Smoke-Free Pledge on behalf of the board. I think we one of the first ITBs to do that. We have an overarching ICP ambition to reduce smoking rates to 5% by 2030, and the QUIT is a part of that. And I should have said from the start that QUIT stands for Question, Understand, Inform and Target. We use acronyms and abbreviations, but for those who are not familiar with it, that's what that stands for. The paper's been planned to come today, and coincidentally, there was a launch of NHS England's tobacco dependency programme just this week. So the chief executive of NHS England published that in her update. So that's a programme that very much aligns with what we've got in existence through QUIT. So that was coincidence, but that's relevant to us today. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Lisa and Leanne, and then I think we'll bring Jackie in after that. So who's going to start off?
I'll start off, David, and then hand over to Jackie, and Leanne will help with any questions. Can I just note that we're getting intermittent sound, so we're only picking up certain people. So anybody that's sitting around wherever Mariana is, we're not picking up questions or sound from there.
So Lisa, we can hear you perfectly. So thank you. I will make sure we're a bit louder at the far end of the table. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. 18 months ago, SLE agreed to continue funding for the QUIT programme until March 25. So today we're asking the board to approve continuation of the programme on a recurrent basis and to support the recommended funding option. Treating tobacco dependency is the quickest and most cost-effective thing that the NHS can do to help to reduce health inequalities, and helping people to stop smoking is also one of the most effective demand management measures that the NHS can take. QUIT is embedding the treatment of tobacco addiction in secondary care. It is our biggest South Yorkshire-wide NHS prevention initiative, and as David has noted, it is key in helping us to reach our ICP bold ambition to reduce adult smoking rates. South Yorkshire is actually leading the way nationally on this, and the QUIT programme is seen as an example of exemplar practice nationally. We reached the national shortlist for the NHS Parliamentary Awards for Health Inequalities recently, following nominations by 4 of our local MPs. There's a strong trust commitment to reducing smoking, so the trusts have all signed up to the NHS Smoke-Free Pledge as well as the ICB, and all of the trusts are supportive of continuation of the QUIT programme. It has been challenging to get the programme fully embedded. It has required trusts and secondary care clinicians to reassess their perception of their role in prevention, and it has also required the changing of the care pathway of every patient that is admitted to hospital. This culture change has been challenging, but we are winning it now. So the majority of our trust colleagues are now feeding back to us that they're not having to do a hard sell for the QUIT programme, and that clinicians are spontaneously coming forward asking how they can get involved and also what more they can do on the wider prevention and health inequalities agenda. We've always said that QUIT would be the first strand of the broader Healthy Hospital programme, and some of the trusts are now beginning to look at what else they can be doing around the prevention agenda. So RDASH, for example, are combining work to promote increased levels of physical activity alongside their QUIT offer, and the Children's Hospital, which incidentally is the only children's hospital providing stop smoking support both for parents and for children, have integrated QUIT into their wider welfare offer. We know that over 3,200 people have been recorded as smoke-free following support from the QUIT programme. There's plenty of opportunity for QUIT performance to further improve. Different trusts are excelling at different parts of the pathway, and if we could get them all to make incremental changes to approach the level of the best performing trust for each stage, we would get substantially more quits. We're also working with the community stop smoking services to decrease the drop-off rate at the time of transfer, and looking at how we can increase the number of patients who are going through the community mental health, staff, outpatient and parent quit pathways. The 3,200 quits we know is only a subsection of all of the quits. We know that QUIT is having a ripple effect, and the families and friends of people who have had advice from the QUIT teams are also going on to QUIT. We're only able to count those people that are going to the community stop smoking services or have ongoing support from the mental health QUIT teams. Nice quote that 6.6% of people will self-quit following advice from healthcare practitioners, and also community stop smoking services are saying that patients are coming to them for support many months after they've had contact with the QUIT teams, but still quoting QUIT as being the stimulus for them thinking about stopping smoking. There's also wider benefits of the programme. So obviously the more parents we can support to stop smoking, the less likely it is that their children will start smoking. And the mental health exec sponsors wanted us to particularly note the wider benefits that they're seeing, such as a decrease in the amount of violence and aggression on the mental health wards, and also that QUIT is really helping them to implement smoke-free policy. We've supported some staff to stop smoking, and we're linking up now with the local authority swap to stop schemes. So the more staff that we can help to stop smoking, the less staff sickness we will have and increased productivity. And we know that QUIT is hitting those people that are most at risk of health inequalities. So I'll pass over to Jackie now to talk a bit more about things from the financial point of view.
Jackie.
Thanks. So just to note, the current cost of the QUIT programme funded by the ICB is around 2.5 million. Of that, around 500,000 is the national funding that we received to implement this programme. So clearly a very small proportion of the overall cost of our programme in South Yorkshire. And that is because we've gone at scale to implement it, not just in acute trust, but across mental health and in children's, as Lisa described. We've prioritised 1.8 million of funding from our health inequalities. We get a small contribution from other ICBs whose patients are treated within our hospitals. In addition to the cost of the ICB funds, the trusts also fund the cost of nicotine replacement therapy, and they also provide in-kind contributions, particularly around the senior leadership and making sure that they're amending their systems and processes. And our local authority colleagues obviously provide the community stop smoking services that we've had different arrangements in terms of how we've supported working with our local authorities. Over the course of the programme, we also received 1.8 million from Yorkshire Cancer Research. So that was a really welcome level of funding whilst we were really mobilising and getting the programme embedded. And actually was particularly helpful because we mobilised this programme during COVID. And so there were obviously some impact of COVID and the response that the providers were having to implement there. So that funding really helped us to make sure that the programme could continue and be embedded. It should be noted that 98% of the costs relate to staff, and those staff are on permanent contracts. So this is an embedded cost already within the system. And whilst the rationale for funding the programme was really around improving health outcomes, it was also predicated that there was an economic case for doing this. So learning from the Ottawa study showed that patients who stop smoking have a fairly immediate impact in terms of readmissions and attendances in A&E, and actually can have quite a significant reduction in resource utilisation over just 2 years having quit. So funding was, as Lisa has said, was originally funded for 2 years. It was expected that the level of performance would increase over that period of time where it would become self-funding. We're not quite there in terms of the level of performance, both in terms of identification of smokers, the implementation of support to provide NRT, also the ongoing support and referrals to our community stop smoking services. So we have got a programme of work where we monitor and work alongside our trusts to make sure that they're really maximising the level of performance at each element of the pathway. But the ultimate marker of success is where we can actually see an individual quit. So we are proposing that the board supports the option in the paper, which is to option 4, where we would continue the overall level of funding for the programme, but that the providers would pick up the cost of the healthy hospital programme managers, partly because of the benefits that we are seeing in the system, but also noting, that their role in terms of the wider role of those healthy hospital programmes. And just noting that, as Lisa said, the wider role that providers are now taking on in terms of reduction in health and quality. So I think that was we wanted to do in terms of an introduction.
Thanks, Jackie. Anyone want to add anything?
Leanne, anything finally?
Leanne, do you want to add anything?
No.
So I think we're opening up to the board for any questions and then we seek approval.
Okay. Any points, questions to be raised? Ben, first.
Probably expecting to comment on this and say I'm supportive of it. But it's just a really good example of how doing things systematically such the improvement we're seeing, and it mentioned that the quality still got some things to improve. That systematic process with every patient. I think it's that how we make sure we systematically embed prevention in all of our pathways. And this just shows it can be done, and it can be done really, really well, but it has to be done with that systematic process and that support behind it. It is expensive, but actually
I'm very happy to support it. I think it's the right thing to do, not least because of smoking prevalence in the population. There is probably some learning for us, though, in this, just about how long does it take us to do sustainable transformational change around here? Because probably if we evaluated this in the first 6 months in terms of cost per quit, our sort of eyebrows would have extended beyond our hairline in terms of getting secondary care clinicians more attuned to advocate for the service. And it's not because they're willful or daft, it's just they're busy doing other things. So I think there is some learning here about how long we have to sustain an investment in something for to get an appropriate payback. It feels like we're there. I think the next question for us is what happens beyond this, I guess. And if we are doing a lot better at smoking prevalence, how long do we keep targeting secondary care? More than happy to support it now, but I think there's something about where do we get this to? We recognise it's a good time to try and influence folk in their interaction with secondary care, but there must be a moment where we kind of go, our tactics need to change slightly. I'm not saying it's this year, absolutely it's the right thing to do into next year, but at some point we're going to have to think that through, I guess.
Jada and then David.
I think just picking up on these points slightly a bit, I just wanted to say talk about prevention per se, and I think quick program is not working. What's brilliant about it is it's given us a track record. And Ben was saying, yes, we're doing things systematically to prove that it's being done, but I think we've got to get comfortable with the notion that prevention does take time. Results to emerge and kind of being able to quantify that in financial or an economic sense. Yes, it does take time, but it's worth its weight in gold. And I think sometimes we kind of have to kind of not knee-jerk reaction. It's almost we need an immediate result or we need an immediate impact. We don't. What we need to do is kind of have a much more sustainable view of prevention that says, yes, it might take some time, but the results are worth it. And I think there's something about the embedding some of that learning in there and then applying that in different places as well. Because this could then advocate for other programs if we can make the results of this speak for itself and transfer that in other places.
Yeah. David.
So well, firstly is to reiterate the money and funding we've had support from Yorkshire Cancer Research, because without that we probably wouldn't have got off the ground stuff recognising the environment, it has taken longer, but not to take away from these things don't happen overnight. COVID did delay the implementation of this. And put it in context of we've got the smoke-free generation legislation that's going through. So this is a single element of a broader sort of smoking tobacco control element. And I think that the signal this week from NHS England about this tobacco dependent programme within all sectors, hopefully its kind of lead will be that we'll have a reduction in number of people who smoke, so therefore the costs should go down proportionally. There's other programmes that are also being embedded. So what I'd suggest, Lee, is that although we're committing to this as a kind of a longer term programme, we review it on an annual basis, and then it's got to be everyone's business. But it sounds like the board
Yeah, I was just going to say sort of that comment around sustainable transformation, how we achieve it. I think we have to be equal with what we sort of expect from prevention programs as well as health and clinical programs that look at still having to go through that and push people to do it and get it in. Actually, we should be the same on prevention and get the system. Should come down as smoking rates come down, but costs are there and keep the money behind them and keep spending it because the benefits are bigger.
So,
just in terms of the context of this, and it's the point they made earlier, in terms of our and it being embedded in operational planning and running and delivering next year's targets, but there's something about how we don't forget that this is actually our core purpose in terms of how we actually want to make long-term sustainable change. So it's just that reminder that when we're in the heat of the moment, we've got to make the connection to this kind of stuff, because else we're forgetting our key purpose.
Okay. Well, it's. I mean, just kind of want to echo that point. I mean, clearly, if we, we know smoking is the biggest cause of death in South Yorkshire. If we didn't support this, I think we'd have to question why we're here. I'm conscious that we are supporting option 4, which does require a contribution from trusts. I suppose it's just the extent to which conversations have taken place with trusts. I mean, we've got an SLE meeting later this month where we'll discuss that. But it's basically to get a sense of where are the partner organisations.
I can pick that up. So we've had discussions. We have a quick oversight group that has senior sponsorship from each of the providers. So this paper has been through that group. We've asked them to take that back into their own organisations. We've done a presentation at the South Yorkshire Directors of Finance group, again with the same business case. We haven't had any negative feedback that they're not supported, but obviously it hasn't been through the SLE discussion.
But I think we'd be looking to put this into contracts, Gavin. We'd be looking to say this is part of the expectation within organisations for the company.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking about the relationship to commissioning intentions and all. I was a commissioner. I think we we'd want to, we want to enable this to happen.
I mean, the SRO of the programme is the chief executive of our acute trust, and I know that he has been, liaising with the organisations. I think there's been a bit of a caveat in that it's all dependent on the financial settlement, but I think we need to, if we're going to commit to one of the most important things that we can do, it has to be our business, so it has to be seen as that, not a bolt-on or something extra.
Okay.
Just building up on that, then, Chairman, can we, because we've been thoroughly supporting this, absolutely the right thing to do, but the review was offered up as opportunities for performance improvement, and is there a way through how we commission this to bake those improvements in? And it might be part of an annual review process, because the case itself swung itself, but I was really quite attractive. We need to make it work better for us, and we build it into that process.
Okay, happy to support that then. On the basis of what we said, you're about to open your mouth, leave it generally what was made in the point.
No, I don't. Jack, get that hand up, obviously.
Sorry, Jack, yeah.
No, it's fine. So it is part of the contractual agreements that we have with the providers that each year we set them some performance improvement targets, and they're based on where they might, each individual trust might see the biggest improvement in performance. So we have been doing that on an annual basis. A small proportion of the funding is linked to the performance.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, everyone happy to go forward with that? Thank you. Place reports now. They're in alphabetical order for those of you who worry that we're choosing to go. Barnsley, Wendy.
Next point earlier on about the importance of universal services. It's great that we gave us a small pot of money. We managed to get a bit of money from the Arts Council to help us in terms of our continue to support people with perimenopause and menopause, in terms of that we deployed across all our library services, and the importance of coaching that stage. So we were able to take forward an inclusive economic growth strategy in Barnsley very recently, and that's the important point for us. That opportunity around being to work and digital skills are going to be really important for people. Not generally seem to see many children adopting some of that digital support in schools. So we really wanted to that, particularly with the development of every child. So that's really great once we get going. Family hubs, our family hubs are really going strong, and support that services are around where people go. Markets are really important places. We don't always optimise the role of markets and the markets as an environment for service and service obviously. So it's great for us to get on the family hubs really anchored into Barnsley market. Our screening service at Barnsley, breast screening service, again, it had a real focus in terms of inequalities. We really wanted to have a look at how inclusive screening services was for people in this country. It's been great that we've really been able to reach in deeply into some of our neighbourhoods, some of our targeted communities and implementing that space. And indeed, with the recent employment of our health and quality lead in the CDC, and that's been doing some really great work about understanding DNAs in the CDC, and we continue on with that sort of work. A bit of highlight onto the We Care into the Futures School and Colleges event, which I know we do across many of the places. It was a fabulous event back end of 2024 down at the Mexico. We had 51 pupils from 16 schools that joined the event. We had theatre teams from the hospital, we had paramedics, we had estate people, and there's really important support services that we forget about IT and other different teams there demonstrating and talking about the roles and opportunities, and it was really great that we got to. So it's a wonderful event, and it was great to get some of that feedback from younger people who felt that joining the event has inspired them. And we've had some really deep reflection from careers advisors as well. So in a minute, actually, we didn't really understand that yet. And also think about the journeys really important too. I'm not going to dwell an awful lot of emergency through definitely taking stock on our priorities around continuous improvements around the absenteeism. That's the hospital. Aging well, our Aging Well program's progressing pretty well. Started with those increased screening assessments for those with malls, access to delivery clinics, hydration was mentioned earlier on in Gavin's update, structured medication. There's lots and lots and lots of things going on. Starting to see some real improvements, and then supplementing that with some further funding we're getting to help them with more work in Barnsley. That will equally really support that the objectives in that program of work. Respiratory work starts to see some positive impact on all conditions, where patients experience sedation. So see some data there in the update. Equally in terms of the discharge work, even though we tend to be a decently performing system in our discharge, we never sit on our laurels, and we certainly take stock decently about the better on discharge, what more could we do, and we put in place some additional actions, which as you can see is up to improve some of our performance. We're very proud of the real deep core production work done around the development of the all age autism strategy delivery plan. We delayed the launch of that feedback that very amazing amendments that we will due to launch very soon, certainly in the next couple of months. And then the final thing really is just to mention that the very wide review we do on children services. It's really very much talk really looking at that deep look at the investments we make for our children and young people mental health on Barnsley, and really understand the deep picture what happens now, what happens to young people wanting to achieve, what's getting away from families, and really positions. And then it's just a snapshot.
Thank you. Does anyone have another Wendy? Doncaster.
Okay. The last time following Wendy, we'll continue to pinch with pride and improve from David's paraphrasing. So just a few things I wanted to mention based upon the agenda really. First part is some of the work that we've been doing around our COVID respiratory hubs in Doncaster. That's the first part of the report. I'll go a bit more up to date data on this. This is a 16-week programme. We received some non-recurrent funding through the COVID national programme, and we wanted to ensure that we took our vaccination programme out to some of our hard-to-reach communities, some of our most vulnerable populations. So we set up a series of these hubs across Doncaster. But the real, and they've been successful. They've administered over 1,000 vaccinations that includes COVID, flu, RSV, shingles, etc. But where I think they're really getting the value here is taking advantage of the every contact counts, and just some of the work that we've done on that. There's over 1,000 people had their blood pressure monitored. And you know, quite a high percentage found to be high, and then referred on to further treatment. Based on the last paper, over 1,600 people have had a conversation about smoking cessation, and 200 people have been referred into smoking cessation services. Similar with weight management, etc. So that every contact counts element of this has been really successful, as well as the sort of demand mitigation, because we do think we've avoided quite a lot of ED attendances as a result of this work. It's been successful, as with many of these programs. It's funded on non-recurrent monies. So the element now is evaluating, proving its success, seeing now whether it's about spread and how we make that part of our recurrent offer. But really quite happy with how that works being undertaken. The next part of the report is a few things. We held the Allied Health Professional Workforce Summit in Doncaster. This workforce is crucial, as we all know, to our work across the system. We asked 3 questions: why do you stay at your organisation? What tempts you to leave? And what reward and recognition does it look like? You'll see the word cloud underneath there. The boldest one is workload, and I think we just need to acknowledge that our staff are working very hard in very, very difficult circumstances, and often this particular profession is one that's often difficult to recruit to and to retain. We've also highlighted family hubs. We're very happy with the work that's going on in that area. It particularly sings to the work the partnership work that we're doing with the voluntary sector and indeed volunteers. One thing that struck me about Izzy's story was that it was only when she reached a certain age and went into crisis and then met Lisa that things started to improve with her. So these programs are very much centered about early years in life and support to families. So long may they continue. And then the final thing I wanted to highlight, which plays again to item 23 on the agenda and the theme of employment. We've commissioned a simulation room service. Makes it sound quite grand. It's really a room that looks like a hospital ward out in Doncaster. And as a result of that, we've really targeted facility staff. I visited it; it's excellent, and they do the training within that simulation centre, and they get confident, and it's really aimed at people who have communication difficulties, autism, people who've struggled for employment in the past, and we've helped them, or the team have helped them with their training, with their application. We now have the employers come to the simulation to do the interviews there rather than a more sort of difficult environment. And the good news is that 16 out of 17 people who have completed the programme are now working at Doncaster Royal Infirmary as part of that facilities team. We're looking at spreading that out to other organisations and other professions as well, because I do think this is the future of helping people into recruitment. We will obviously link very closely with the Trailblazer.
And the last point, really important, what we've talked a lot about that. We've got obligations, haven't we, as NHS employees, but extolling everybody else to do it. It's really important. Rotherham.
Thank you. Welcome to Rotherham. So 5 things from me. So first one is the Rotherham Care Home Hydration Project. So we won the Health Service Journal Award. So people are familiar with the Health Service Journal Award. They're probably the most prestigious award in the NHS. And after sort of Trust of the Year, the one that won the win, I guess, is Place-Based Partnership and Integrated Care Award. So it's pretty amazing, actually, to think of all the places and all the integrated care arrangements across England that we've put together. This is an example of the hydration project of where you can invest a little bit of money and actually save more money and improve health outcomes. So just the quick highlights would be, it's basically 1,000 care home staff across Rotherham trained in best practice in hydration and the use of antibiotics. It reduced ambulance usage, it reduced hospital demand, and it reduced antibiotic prescribing and significantly improved health outcomes. So across the board. And the beautiful thing about this one, it's easy to roll out across South Yorkshire as well, and it's other areas and roll out as well, I'm sure. So we're currently, I think, actually in the process of being rolled out in the other 3 areas. Second one is the SEND inspection, so special educational needs and disability. People might not all be aware that actually this is an inspection of the ICB and local authority. We are subject to CQC and Ofsted inspections. And this is the first one, I think, as an ICB in our 2.5 years that we've actually had. All of our places will be done in this site, the Rotherham's first out stock, so it's just interesting just to put that out. The history in Rotherham is the last inspection in 2019 didn't go well. We had a written statement, turned over 50 actions, which the partnership worked really hard to implement. This time in October, you get the call, it's an unannounced inspection, right, 3 weeks of inspection across ICB local authority and all key staff. And there's 3 categories you can fall into. This is sort of my language, but basically you either consistently don't deliver high quality services to patients, you either partially do or you consistently do. We fell into the category of consistently doing. It does mean we're not being inspected again in 5 years. So obviously that's great news for us, and as a party we're absolutely delighted to go from where we were to get to that. It's a big achievement for us. There's some quotes just in there, but it basically said they found that most children and young people's needs are identified and assessed quickly, and they enjoy a range of mainstream schools and specialist provisions, and the report highlighted that children and young people are valued and visible in the community. So the big thing for the Rotherham partnership, and it's set us up nicely as Rotherham becomes the 2025 Rotherham Children's Capital Culture. So children's services absolutely on the crest of the wave. third thing I want to pick up is Rotherhithe. So I've mentioned this before. So Rotherhithe is a digital platform for Rotherham patients for health and wellbeing and mental health support. And if you think there's just over 260,000 people were registered with Rotherham practices, we've had 6 million hits on the website. We've had 179,000 unique users. And the main people that are using getting support with are mental health support, wellness support, depression, anxiety and stress, bereavement and alcohol. But it does actually, there's over 20 areas where of support that are in there, which you can see in there. I'll go through them all. But you can see the scale and the way this has really got embedded within the services. The feedback is just sensational. Because people get that instant access which they crave, and luckily the usage is where it is, and the GPs always report very positively about it. That's Rotherhithe. Next thing I just want to pick up is social prescribing. So the National Academy for Social Prescribing just published a new report. It highlighted Rotherham and Kirklees as areas of best practice, and the Rotherham social prescribing services. I mean, social use, but it's well embedded. It's been in place embedded since 2013. The sort of key thing with the way the Rotherham service works, it does reduce impact on other services for people who access social prescribing, and it's so we've got 33 to 40% reduction in non-elective inpatient spells and 39 to 40% reduction in A&E attendances of social prescribing. You can see, so it reduces impact, and that's that whole system approach. The last thing I wanted to mention is something very much in the news. So you probably picked up around child sex exploitation and the Alexis J report. It's in the news at the moment because the national recommendations, whether we're fully agreed, it's going through the political cycles at the moment to see whether people wish to do. So just a bit of a history lesson. So Alexis J did a report in 2014 into child sex exploitation in Rotherham. They looked at historical abuse from 1997 to 2003. Alexis J highlighted potentially 1,400 victims of child sex exploitation. So since 2014, we've been working with the National Crime Agency, local authority, working through something called Operation Stonewood to try and identify victims and support victims. And the Trauma Resilience Service is key to this, and this is fantastic that it's won this award, because what it does, it particularly supports victims and families to go through all the court proceedings that are coming out of Stonewood. And just to give you an idea of Stonewood, there's already identified 1,150 victims, and there's been over 220 arrests. The court cases have been going for 3 or 4 years, and I'm expected to go for another 2 years. There's over 100 police officers working on it. It's the biggest police investigation in the history of the British Police Force. It's huge. So what happened is we've got this trauma resilience service, and it's not funded. You know, something is best practice, it's unique to Rotherham, it's over and above the standard offering because it is bespoke to this unique circumstance. Working with the Health and Justice Ministry, we've managed to secure funding again to keep the service going for another 2 years to make sure it covers the court cases associated with Operation Stonewood. That's fantastic news for us. And then what we're doing is we've got a South Yorkshire Trauma and Resilience Service, which will then phase into as it goes through. And that's something, that's a new service that's coming in this year that we're working on in South Yorkshire basis. But I just wanted to highlight that, and you'll hear about it in the news. It's something that happened in Rotherham, but it's the national actions that haven't been implemented is the issue, not actions in Rotherham. So that's it, Chair. I'll pass to Sheffield.
Thank you very much. Emma, Sheffield.
Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I just want to talk about the two of our priorities in healthcare partnership. The first one is the modern neighbourhood, which is now kind of being renamed with This Is Us, and that is the name that the community leaders wanted for themselves. So next Wednesday we are launching the programme. It's based on some feedback we've had. So over the summer we've engaged with the 4 middle super put out areas that we talked about previously, and we had 1,000 residents engaged in that and telling us what they wanted, and a lot of that was around access to outdoor space, activity, exercise, and on the back of that we're launching this fund which is £1 million. This Is Us unites us, the ICB, Sheffield City Council and the Yorkshire community sector, looking at participatory budgeting, so allowing communities to vote on things that matter to them. I think we raised this all the way through this meeting. It's about how we make this stick. So we've got New Local helping us there, a think tank, in terms of looking at the impact of this investment and what impact it will have in future years. But as Shahida said, I think we're just going to hold our nerve here because it is quite slow. some of this is going to be quite difficult, but we're also looking to engage with one of our universities to sort of build some academic rigour around this as well, so we can evidence it. But if we don't start doing more of this, we're never going to make the changes we need. So when you talked about working with the combined authority and the local authority, I think it's really important that we continue to do this. So we're looking forward to it next week, and we'll see what happens. The next one is around the estate. So yeah, we are one of those lucky places that have got some capital funding for primary care. And again, we talked there about where we're up to in terms of the phasing of the investment programmes in the city centre. And again, we're looking at not just re-provision of facilities, but actually what we can do differently, working with our local authority, working with the sector, but also thinking about health in the high street. What does that mean? What does neighbourhood health mean? Gavin mentioned it before. I think we're all thinking about what that could look like. Where do we really bring that community investment and the medical and clinical models together to make something really different? So we're looking at that, and we're also looking at models outside of the city centre. There's potential opportunities to do some development with our local authority in other spaces, because again, it's not just about Sheffield city centre, but actually what we're doing across Sheffield to really drive some innovation in primary care. In terms of celebrating the wins, you'll see there that we had Jamie Peacock, who, for those of you who aren't sports fans, was the captain of England rugby league team. And again, I think it's important that as we go into this new phase of transformation, we start to draw parallels from other agencies. So actually, some of the sport parallels in sport in terms of achieving excellence, if we just carry on thinking about the same thing in the same way, we probably aren't going to really test our thinking in our minds. So the team absolutely loved it. I don't think we've ever seen anything, I'm looking at Jackie now, get so much positive feedback in terms of quick wins, celebrating what we're doing. So it was really, really beneficial. We've got a follow-up session the week after next. In terms of recognising our key achievements, you'll see there we've done some great work around discharge. And Sarah will report on it, and I think, although it's been tricky and difficult, I think Sheffield's really held its own in terms of its discharge position, no criteria to reside, and that has been through years of work, and we've still got a lot of things to do, but I do think we've made some significant improvements in that area. We're also looking at same-day urgent emergency care and a new clinical assessment service. So again, lots of work going on there. And again, it's been clinically led, which I think is really important in the work that we do in place. And we've got some great GP clinical directors supporting us on this. You'll see there's some other work we're doing around spirometry, COPD, long-term conditions. Chronic disease management will be an absolute focus for us as we move through next year, really, or this year, I keep saying next year. And again, we've won some awards, not as prestigious as Health Service Journal, Chris, but we're not doing too bad, and particularly around the carers. I think there's still a lot of work to do around our carers. They provide a fabulous service in Sheffield, and we need to support them moving forward. So that's me, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Emma?
It's actually just a general point, Chris. I generally think these reports are excellent. I think it's easy for us to get wound up with the day-to-day pressures and challenges, but there's some fantastic work taking place in every place. And I always take ideas back into my own organisation from the use. Really good sharing.
Point well made. Thank you, Lee.
It's just a footnote really on the primary care capital programme. Really, I think one of our learnings from that programme is just to get some of this stuff over the line. How embedded some of your staff need to be in terms of their relationship with local government. They're shaping really complex agreements, Section 2 agreements with local government, that getting all those primary care capital schemes over the line. If I didn't have Jackie and some other key individuals in the organisation, there is no way I would have been able to land the complexity of that programme, given how capital works in the NHS and how well embedded some of my staff are with local government colleagues. So it's thanks to Jackie and some of our colleagues, because we're getting there. We're getting there on all of that primary care capital investment, which would not be possible unless we had really embedded relationships between the council and some of our place-based staff.
I agree. Well done, Jack. I agree with you. And we announce here very easy, isn't it, Greg? We've got this capital. Actually delivering it is a really complex task. We know that.
Cassie.
Yeah, it was kind of just a couple of general questions to the place directors. So family hubs comes across really strongly, really effectively with the RCP bold ambitions, but the models are really variable across the system and across the places. South Mariner are involved in the kind of family hubs that have been developed for work that's come out of the RCP and the work with Bernardo. So we're doing some service evaluation around that, and actually what does that do from an output point of view. So I'm really interested in understanding
each of the places, how those are being evaluated, and how we know what the best model going forward is. And I know that might be slightly different in each of the places, but I think that's really important for us in relation to outcomes as we go forward. The second point was about SEND. So Chris, I know the amount of work that went into the SEND inspection from a lot of perspectives. So I think a huge well done to kind of teams across the partnership. And from an ICB perspective, we have now got our own internal SEND board, so we're sharing that learning across our places from a health point of view. But again, I'm really interested in understanding from a place partnership perspective how the kind of lessons around that are being shared and how that's being worked through into the SEND prioritisation plans in each of the places and the local SEND boards, and kind of having looked through the papers and the palliative care strategy further on. I actually think that's a really excellent piece of work. That's something we need to think about kind of from the SEND space. So I know there's been work commissioned from the local authority chief execs and Gavin, but I don't think it quite focuses in the same way that the palliative care work does from a system point of view, and then how that then fits into each of the places. So I think, for me, from the SEND point of view, I think there's some work for us to do with this space.
But I think that's part of broader work, isn't it, Kathy? Which is we have 4 very strong places, local authorities. We must make sure that that doesn't mean that we don't learn the lessons of what's going on in another local authority, both good and bad lessons, by the way. There'll be both, and it's just a constant challenge we've got. It's not to undermine the independence of individual place, but it is to say, if we don't learn across our own organisation, well, shame on us.
Just to comment on that, if I could just follow up.
Yeah.
So what we have done as part of the learning of the process, because it was quite a new process, the relevant team who were inspected have been meeting with the other place teams to give them an idea of what to expect and how best to prepare for the inspections. So we have started to do that. We've been using your meeting, Kathy, that you just referred to, the South Yorkshire SEND meeting as a vehicle for that. That is a good benefit of South Yorkshire working. We are sharing that.
Good.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Just a quick final point from me, I guess, on this. Just to place on record my thanks to the ICB digital transformation team. They've worked really well with the Sheffield Place team and with partners across Sheffield to build the discharge tool, the digital discharge tool for Sheffield thing. We could have just gone bought something off the shelf, which might be quite costly, but we went back to first principles, built something exactly what we needed from scratch. I think it did that in about 10 weeks, working really well with partners across Sheffield. So I just want to say a big thank you to them for that.
Point well made, thank you. Okay, that's the end of the police report. You've got a 10-minute break. 28 minutes past, you're back in here. Yeah, well, we read into it.
I'm all right. How are you?
Television, something else. Okay. Yeah.
some of the
He's also talking about
introduce formality starting and that is your own car. Next please. Mark, I've tried flogging mine on eBay. It's not so far it's gone well.
Get on the other side.
Oh, not interested.
Got plenty of those. The playing since past.
Receiving sometimes things you don't want. In that rich tradition.
We don't know. Won't be you sure it's not. You know, you can get these handy presents.
I'm really disappointed if it won't live.
I'm now.
What a picture of you, illuminated frame, pointing at it in England. Wonderment.
I get a note to go.
Okay, can we start, please? Thank you. Agenda item 13, performance objectives. Terry, you leading us through this?
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Is the idea of to start the report, I think it's important that we look at the quality aspects. So I'll start with asking Kathy to give an overview of the quality metrics, and then we'll go to the performance report from there.
I'm thinking about the sort of our say the sort of biggest challenge for us around quality and safety at the moment, unsurprisingly. Majors around urgent emergency care, and myself, Peg and Sarah, been working really closely in relation to how we work with our system control centre, but also our providers in being able to kind of identify risk, how we manage and share risk across the system and across providers, including sort of the ambulance service to minimise risk per se. But also how we capture it and make sure that is implemented really quickly. So just in the process of sort of wrapping the policy teams around SDC to understand how we can work a little bit better together in that space. But I'm sure David will kind of pick some of that up when he gets to UEC. Maternity remains a for us, unsurprisingly. We continue to see the biggest challenge with in preterm birth rates. That's very closely connected to kind of all the work we're doing in relation to sort of population health. David and colleagues have already talked about kind of smoking cessation, and we know that those are some of the key factors that kind of predetermine early birth. So our rates there are higher than the national average, and there's lots of work still ongoing in that space and throughout maternity plan, which we thought an update before Christmas in relation to our priorities. Around that, we're just going into our kind of annual cycle of insurance and volunteer and oversight visits with each of our organisations that have got maternity and neonatal services.
and that helps us support them in relation to identifying any sort of risks they've got from a service delivery perspective, and they start next week. So actually, they're a really helpful kind of space, and we do that collectively together with a regional team, with sort of peer reviews between organisations and ourselves from an LMNS point of view. Nothing more to add kind of from a maternity point of view. In relation to some of the other quality indicators, I've been doing some mapping work and some conversations, particularly with Mark, in relation to how that maps into what we're presenting in the IPR, how that maps into the insightful board papers that came out from NHS again at the end of last year, and actually already cited as an ICB board on those quality and safety indicators that we should be, and we've been having those conversations again through quickly, and myself, Sarah David, really work on triangulating the performance and quality data to tell that story to quickly around where there may be sort of risk or concern, or actually good practice in our system that we can either articulate or we can do a deep dive approach from a view to then provide board with assurance. So the indicators in the IPR are continuing to develop, I think, in that space, but we are covering most of them. When I've kind of looked at the IPR and had those conversations with Mark, I think the gap, and I suppose that makes it clearer in the team, is we've still got a lot of placeholders in that quality section around indicators and data. I know that data is there because we look at it at place level as part of our kind of quality assurance processes at place, but there's a real plea to kind of come in after some time frames to be able to have that in here from a board point of view, so that we can sort of tell the story and paint that picture. From our provider organisations perspective, I haven't updated the page, missed one bit in relation to providers requiring support for maternity services. So actually STH came off the MSSP programme, so the National Maternity Safety Programme, and actually they've made huge strides in relation to the work and the improvements that have been done from a Sheffield Teaching Hospital perspective around maternity, and we continue to work with them in sort of embedding that. And that improvement in maternity care across the board, I think, is predicated on support we've given her around the maternity workforce. So we've worked really closely from an LMNS point of view and across our providers in making sure that not only have we recruited, but we've retained midwives, and actually in NEY we probably have one of the best pictures in that space from a maternity safety point of view and a workforce point of view. Lots of work has been done across that space. And we've got a number of providers that are in enhanced quality assurance and improvement oversight. STH, so Sheffield Teaching Hospital, Sheffield Health and Social Care, kind of moving into that business as usual approach, really, from a place oversight perspective. And then Doncaster and Bassett Law Teaching Hospitals will be moving into an NHS-led sort of intensive approach, so I quickly call it. So it's got a quality umbrella, but actually that will be a that will pull in finance, performance, quality and leadership oversight, and we're just waiting for the first dates of the meetings with that from a regional point of view, and that will be a regionally chaired meeting. And the purpose of that is to provide support around improvement for Doncaster and Bassett Law teaching hospitals, and again, David may touch on some of the audiology areas in relation to that. From a patient experience perspective, we're working with Katie from an engagement perspective. So Katie's going to pick up the umbrella of experience so that we can make sure we've got a triangulation between complaints, experience, and what our safety and quality information is telling us to get that much broader picture for sort of quality and what our citizens are experiencing from our service perspective, not just around providers, but also from a primary care point of view. So that work is ongoing. We've got a placeholder, as you can see, for a number of sort of indicators, and I do think it's quite important that we move forward with that, because I feel really important we need to come up with a gap in data in those spaces. So I do think we need to kind of get to a position where we've got that, and then we can report on that
a little bit more robustly. And then the only other point I was going to make was that from an ICB perspective, obviously we have a number of statutory responsibilities around SEND, CHC and safeguarding. We've been trialling a national data board for a SEND point of view with a sort of national team. So we're hoping we'll be able to have a page as part of the IPR that will pull through the safeguarding dashboard, the SEND dashboard, and some CHC quality information, which I think gives us then that more rounded picture of sort of quality oversight for us from an ICB board point of view. But I'll see if David wants to.
Please, just two things. I think Anthony has shared in the Doncaster report before about paediatric cardiology, and we've suspended and partially suspended some of the services there. We've got mutual aid process in place. We're doing a look back at children for a 5-year period and working with them to ensure that any delay in the treatment or services they require. So that's ongoing. So we continue to work through that. But there's any particular in that, that's just a note. I think the second thing for me was just about winter pressures in general. So we know this is the busiest time for the health service in the calendar year. We know that we've had a pandemic prior to Christmas, and Gavin's already highlighted that we've particularly got high levels of flu at the moment. So while most people that will be a minor illness, and you take yourself to bed, you're not well. For those people who have medical conditions, they're very young and they're very old. That is quite a significant illness to people. And so I think at this time, I think as a board, I'd be asking that if we do seek medical attention, come forward. So although the NHS is busy, it's open is the message I'm trying to get out there, and actually utilising 111 online, the NHS app and NHS 111. There is somebody you can contact should you not be sure what to do. Currently, we're going through a cold snap, so equally, obviously, what we can do to look after our neighbours and vulnerable people who may be around us. It's important to look after those. And finally, staff are working extremely hard and to treat those who need care, and just if people are finding that you have to wait, please be patient and courteous. The staff are doing those the best. So although it's not directly enough, I think it's relevant to this time of year, and that the NHS steps up to the challenges that it has to face, and we just ask the citizens and public just to be aware of that.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Kathy. So in that context then, I will just give you the performance update. In terms of urgent care, we delivered 70% of patients were seen within 4 hours in November. That compared to a regional position of just below 72% and a national position of just above 72%. So we were slightly behind the curve in terms of November. That challenge continued into December, where we delivered approximately 68% of patients were seen within the 4 hours. And just to put it in context, already in January, we were currently about 64%. So it's been a really challenging time for us in terms of where we are. Having said that, in terms of the national position over the last couple of weeks, there has been a number of systems that have gone into critical incidents, and there are two, hit the news yesterday, there were 2 ambulance services that have lost critical incidents. There's conversations yesterday across the country about what level of incident where we are in terms of that. As a system, we've stayed at Opal 2, Opal 3, which is okay. It's all relative, and we've had this conversation this morning. We can't forget that we're not delivering what we want to deliver, but actually where we compare across the country. We have seen some challenges in the last couple of weeks. Doncaster have had a couple of nights where they've had long ambulance handover delays, and we've put work in place the next day to put plans together in terms of that. Before Christmas, we also did some, maybe assurance is too strong a word, but actually Kathy and I visited all bar Sheffield, teaching all of our hospitals to walk the emergency care pathway to see what facilities and sites were available, so we could support them and make sure that they were, challenge and support in terms of that system work. And Doncaster, because of its challenges, had a visit from both the South Yorkshire Urgent Care Board and NHS, where again we walked the way to try and identify any areas for improvement. In terms of where we are in no criteria to resign, which is a big part of the problems that we have at the beginning of January. If you look, our majors and our resource occupancy is high, i.e. people are bedded down in A&E, and our bed occupancy is touching 99% in a lot of our clubs. Actually, the work we've done across South Yorkshire has meant that we've been able to keep this at Upper 2, Upper 3. The Barnsley have, Barnsley keep their no criteria to resign about the 10% mark. They do that. Rotherham looks high in the data pack. I think we've identified a data quality issue in the trust, because actually the number of patients with no criteria to reside at Barnsley is about 40. It peaked at 60 at the beginning of this week, but that's because of the Christmas backlog, and they're working on getting that down, which is about the 10% mark. We've had some specific work streams in Doncaster looking at how we work across the system. We've now gone to daily maid meetings, which has meant that we've managed to maintain. We've maintained the system, and we've got process now in Doncaster, and as Emma mentioned, Sheffield, and the work that's been done in the home. Again, we try and maintain about 80 on pathway 1. It peaked at 100 this week, but again, we're already starting to see inroads into that because the system worked efficiently over the weekends. So yeah, not a rosy position in urgent care, but relatively to other performers. And just to say, I have taken phone calls to take diverts from both the Scunthorpe area of the patch and the Pindersfield area of the patch. So we have taken patients in South Yorkshire because other systems around us have struggled in terms of maintaining services over this last 2 weeks. In terms of primary care, I think the biggest thing to highlight is GP collective action. We have seen more, it's local intelligence because we don't have data on this. It's very difficult to pin down the absolute impact that this is happening, but we are hearing more noise from our trusts, and we've got some letters in the system about what what hospitals have and haven't received. Otherwise, I say we're waiting, getting the evidence, being really hard. So a lot of this is hearsay, but I think we are starting to see the impact of that, which will be impacting on healing. We're keeping a close eye in terms of that. In terms of electives, we finished the year, and the numbers just came in as I was sat here this morning. We unvalidated finished the year for about 640 patients over 65 weeks, which is not where we wanted to be. We had over 300 neurology patients in Sheffield teaching. They have now, and it's taken them some time, but they have now employed an in-sourcing company to actually get into that backlog. So we expect to see that come down. We've got to look at the sustainability of the neurology model across the system, because bringing in-sourcing is a short-term fix. And we've got specific ENT pressures in our Doncaster site, which again is workforce driven, and we need a sustainability piece around that. In terms of just jumping around a bit, Gavin made reference to the elective plan that arrived on the desk. Monday that was, we need to do an evaluation of what that means for South Yorkshire, and we'll bring that back next time. But actually, our average waiting times across our trust against the 18 weeks, just doing a bit of a deep dive. I poked around the numbers earlier in the week. We're actually, for all Sheffield stands out in terms of long wait lists, its average wait for treating patients is actually relatively good, i.e. probably in the middle across the country. I think its average treatment time is about 14 weeks. So that for non-admitted, obviously that averages out a lot of stuff, but it means that actually getting back on track should be relatively easier for Sheffield once it gets its tail in control. So that's elective. The other bit of the elective pathway is obviously cancer. And as Emma mentioned, I think we need to do a piece of work about what is our sustainability model for cancer across Sheffield teaching. They're still in tier 1, and my worry with the tiering system is NHS focused on the immediacy, and what we need is actually a sustainable model. So we're working with Sheffield teaching alongside them to look at how do we put a sustainable model in place, because this performance. In terms of cancer, we delivered the FDS standards, and we continue to do that. So we continue to tell people that they haven't got cancer, but we're not seeing any real shift in terms of our performance against the 62-day standard. We're averaging 62%, which isn't where we need to be. That's not great. So there's work to do. Certainly around our urology pathways, our gynae and our lower GI pathways. It's how we get that sustainability model. In terms of mental health, and I realise I've jumped all over the place in my notes, we have got out of area placements, again, still continues to be a pressure point for us. It's actually reduced in RDAT, and we've had a spike now in Sheffield Health and Social Care. There is a working group set up with Toby as the chair, and actually I think what we're doing is trying to, again, put a sustainable model in place rather than just sort of the immediacy of the whack-a-mole that pops up here and it pops up there. So a lot in the report. Yes, I've given a lot of information there, so I'll pause in terms of that whether anything.
Sarah, thank you, really helpful. Any questions, Sarah? Maura, please.
Yeah, just one question. I'm really comprehensive, Sarah. You covered most points I've written down. Somewhere in it, there's talking about merging fragile specialities. I'm just wondering, tell me a bit more about that.
So the Fragile Services Review is a piece of work that the acute provider are looking at what are their highest risk specialties. And they've identified 6 specialties that they want to work on together. And I'm not getting this right. It's dermatology, community, oral max facts. I can't remember the other 3. And what that is looking at South Yorkshire solutions rather than individual trusts trying to solve single-handed clinicians and services that are by their very nature small.
Helpful, yeah, because that's one of the things about having an ICB or a bigger footprint is to look at some of those areas which are very important, but actually we can't really afford to do it for everything else. So I'm just keen to know there's work going on those.
I think it needs to ramp up, and I think that comes in with our financial strategy, because I think we've picked quite small to get you.
Okay, I've got Lee, Leslie, and Lucy. Lee.
So I think more very explicitly in the context of 25-26 planning, we're having a conversation with the Acute Federation about audiology, dermatology, community paediatrics, OMFS, ophthalmology, and urology. And there is some synergy there, isn't there, between some areas of performance issue where we're going, is there a different way that we could potentially deliver these services that would be more sustainable? And I think very explicitly in the context of the sort of financial regime and settlement we're going to get for next year, we're going to have to get deeper into some of that conversation. I think we're starting with those 6. I mean, Kevin was whispering to the right of me, I'm surprised it's just 6. But I think you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And it's not easy to change some of those things, is the reality. So even though we can kind of identify there might be different ways that we want to run those services off the acute side, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to deliver it. But I think we're going to have to get into some of those conversations.
And some of the things, and this is where we need to go in the acute bed, is it's very acute focused, and actually some of the solutions might not be around acute services. It might well be that membership. So we've got to get that balance right and challenging the acute services in that respect.
Leslie, then Lucy.
Thank you. First off, just a comment really. I mean, this report just from where we were even 6 months ago. So I just want to thank them and the team, because I think, it's really shaping up now, and it's very helpful and useful. Want to support, however, Cassie's about the quality and patient safety stuff, because it's there, but it's not there yet enough. And we are putting a bit of pressure on in terms of quickly really to say we need to get that in there a lot stronger now. I know Sarah and the team have been doing a lot of work with Cassie and David on that, but I'd like to see that coming through a lot more strongly in the next few months. And then just another point really, which is when we take that whole system look at things sometimes in these numbers and statistics, and I know we do that for a reason. Sometimes though there are significant kind of outliers when you look across and read across, and I just wonder whether we could get a bit more in the narrative about what's happening on some of those outlier things, because some of them really kind of hit you in the face. And I think when we take that overview, sometimes it's masked and it gets lost. And I think we need to hear that if there is a particular thing from a particular provider or whatever, what's happening. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Lucy and then Rick, please.
Leslie pretty much already said what I wanted to say, which was that I'll just echo it. The report, as good as it is, still is lacking any type of real patient experience information beyond some very basic family data. So just it's really good to see they work on the representative information.
Lee and then go. Lee. Oh, Lisa. Yeah, we asked you. Yeah. Lisa, I apologise.
I can believe
Part of what I said has been echoed a little bit, and it sounds like we've made a lot of progress. And I think my interest is kind of in maternity, so it looks like we've got the workforce stuff in the right direction. And again, it would be interesting to hear the staff experience and patient experience. I guess for me, it's the outcomes that I'm interested in. So I know that that might take time, but it would be interesting to know when we start to see a shift in the outcomes and how quickly we can expect to see an improvement there. So I think that's it.
So I'm going to come in on that one because I think I've done the same as Kathy. We've sat down with the insightful board, looked at this report. We've also done a piece of work looking across other ICBs, and dare I say it, I think this report reflects quite well compared to what other ICBs are saying and what we are trying to pinch with pride in terms of what's out there. But I think you're absolutely right. There were a couple of graphs in here in terms of the deprivation and the attendances at A&E, which I think more of a conversation. I've also asked for put at paediatric level, because I think what we're not focused on again is how are we linking this to our younger people. So I think all of those comments are very right. We need to challenge and we need to think about that.
Yeah, I think it's the challenge around the maternity stuff that we use the nationally validated data that's in here, which is always about.
Yeah,
but actually locally in the LMNS in our regional quality maternity group, we look at more near time data. So it's not the nationally validated data, but it does give a better picture, and that's what we take with. Can we do it 6 monthly, more detailed report quickly, and we take that level of detail into that meeting, but really conscious of what needs to come forward is the nationally validated data. But what will pull through in material that is if there are any concerns, so if we've got any acute deterioration, we'll make sure we pull that through into the IPR. Thank you.
Gavin.
Yeah, just quickly, just to say, absolutely agree with the points about we need to strengthen this in relationship, the quality, safety, and patient experience points. I think that's really well made. Also, but just I guess more positively, just to say the health inequalities lens that you can see against some of the standards. I think is really good to see it. So more of that would be good. But I think we also then need to have a discussion around. So what does that mean? What do we do about that? So if you look at early diagnosis rates in cancer, there's clearly some differences there. So what action does that then feed into? The only final point I would say is I think comparisons against the standard clearly should be there, must be there, but it would also be good to get a kind of relative performance sense. So comparison with, say, the regional average or the national average, I think it's quite helpful to give us context. It's just a couple of points for me, but massively improved. Yeah.
I think we were looking at a refreshing summer to step back and look at the document, but I think I need to read that.
Sarah, thank you. Really helpful. Okay, item 15, because we did the system quality of palliative care strategy. Are you leading us, Emma?
I am, yes, thank you. And also Louise has joined me. Louise, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm Louise Potter, the author of the strategy, and I'm lead for palliative and otherwise care.
So thank you, Chair. So what I've tried to do is just do a short slide deck rather than try and take people through this document. It's quite big. So I won't do death by PowerPoint, but I just thought it'd be useful to set the context. So yeah, so obviously this is one of my areas alongside cancer and infection. And I just want to sort of take you through the journey we've had so far in this space. So sorry, just put on the second slide, please. So I think this is really important. At the end of life deserves as much beauty, care, and respect as the beginning, because there's one sure thing that's going to happen to us all. And we've done a lot of research and a lot of work with our communities who tell us, quite frankly, that what we're doing in South Yorkshire isn't good enough. We know that about 44% of people who die in hospital, and again, that is often not in their wishes, but we haven't done things right. So in terms of our journey, next slide please, Max. This is what the public have told us. Only 30% agreed or strongly agreed and felt services work well together. 46% agreed or strongly agreed they have had the support to live the way their life in the way they wanted to. There's lots of different quotes there, but what we have done is really try to see as much information from our public health professionals as possible, and we've used HealthWatch as well to help us in that. Next slide. So in terms of the current position, we have a strategic duty in relation to palliative and end-of-life care, and we've been producing, well, we've produced a strategy, obviously it's attached, informed by national policy, evidence, data, extensive public experience and professional insights. And so this has been co-produced in April last year. We've established a robust governance structure, so we now have a board which I chair, which is multidisciplinary, includes people from hospices, people with lived experience. We've got Ben, who's been fantastic in this space, and has really helped us with this, trying to move from very much a medical model into a more holistic kind of model. And each of the 4 places in South Yorkshire also has a local implementation plan alongside the wider South Yorkshire priorities. So the strategy so far was approved by the ICB Board Subcommittee, which is FEG, and Formal Executive Committee on the 18th of December. It was approved and endorsed by the NHS South Yorkshire Strategy Board in May 2024. So it's kind of been a bit delayed coming here, which I apologise for, but I think it's really important that we raise the profile of palliative and end-of-life care, certainly given all of the sort of political things that are coming out around it. So in terms of the structure, the next slide, I'm not going to go through that, you probably can see that, but we do feed very much into our 4 places and into regional and national arrangements. Next slide, please. So in terms of the robust process we've had so far, as I said, we have 300 people that experience inputting. We had a vision day, seems to be forever ago, when we had lots of people in a room talking about what hadn't happened previously. I think we've really come a long way as a community in terms of working in partnership, which is fantastic. We've audited it against the national ambitions of the framework, and we've had, as I say, thorough professional consultation on the strategy, including directors of public health, local authorities, some health and wellbeing boards as well. And we've had positive feedback from all the people engaged so far. And that really led us, so we had a number of iterations of this, and we really felt that, well, we had a lot, as I say, comments that it wasn't holistic enough. So, as I say, Ben really helped us in shaping it to be much more holistic and less clinical. And it was approved by our board in May. Next slide, please. So in terms of progress today, again, I'm not going to go through this, I'm sure you'll all have read it, but I think one of the key highlights for us was getting some agreement to fund children and young people's model. There's a real issue around children and young people's palliative end-of-life care, where we only have one consultant in the whole of South Yorkshire, and he was in Sheffield Children. So by working together with the Children's Alliance, Young People's Alliance, we've now created a different model where we are training up consultants in the other 4 trusts, to make sure that we've got some better, we've got better engagement, and we've got a transition plan, because if we hadn't done that, this consultant's actually going to retire in about 18 months, and he does all of this work. He's a magnificent, but it's really starting to take its toll on him. So thank you to my colleague on the right for helping with that one. Bluebell Wood, again, it's the Children's Hospice and in special measures, and again, we've seen real improvements in the way they have improved against CQC standards. We've got new governance. St Luke's has just had a CQC outstanding rating, as of some of the other hospices. We've got some really good provision, even though there are issues around funding. So there's some really good stuff going on, and also Compassionate Sheffield, which is a kind of non-medical model and way of looking at dying, again, has been supported by ourselves and by the hospice and by the local authority. So lots of stuff going on in that space. And again, it's a testimony to the kind of partnership working we've got across South Yorkshire. Next slide, please. So again, this is some of the priorities for 2025. Obviously, embedding that children and young people's model. We've got I'm leaving, well, sort of leaving with Lee, agreed to look at hospice funding. There are differential rates of hospice funding and provision across South Yorkshire. It's an area that we need to focus on. We've just approved some funding in Sheffield for St Luke's because there's some issues around sustainability, but we need to think about how we do that across the patch and how we feed into any national or regional discussions about this, because it's a real issue around how they are funded and the kind of work that they do, which really does improve the end of life experience of people. So lots of other stuff going on, which I won't go into, as you can see that. I think the next slide, the last slide I just wanted to touch on, which was really just to say that we need a system that is future-proof and can respond. Obviously, a lot of people don't die in the place they want to, and that's hugely, hugely emotionally draining for people and their families. And there's a lot of issues around bereavement support. We don't do enough around bereavement support. Again, Ben has led a needs assessment across the 4 places to understand the gap. There's loads of gaps in bereavement support, and we need to think really differently about how we do that, because what we're providing at the moment just isn't good enough, and how do we work with our local authorities in that space. We've got lots of workforce challenges. Obviously, the 10-year plan's coming out. We're trying to do some response to feed into that. There's the assisted dying bill, and again, not being political, but that's really starting to focus people's minds. We've got this additional investment that came out of 100 million and then 26 million, I think, for children. But again, that is linked to capital, and actually, this is about workforce needs. So again, what we're going to do differently. Whilst it's great, I still think we need to have that sustainable plan. From an efficiency point of view, again, we're sending people into hospital multiple times for interventions that they don't want and they don't need, and they're actually harming them, and that is just simply not good enough. So I think we need to do a lot more work in that space, and so we're exploring different ways of working. We've got some great clinicians in our network, Sam and people and other people that are really helping us. So our immediate needs around hospices, emergencies around bereavement, and ideas around community and where do we shift support and resource in primary and community services. So that was really just kind of a whistle-stop talk of I think some of the key issues that were in that report. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Louise, who's been brilliant in this space and really does work across the 4 places, which sometimes isn't that easy. And I've just asked the board to note the report and for any questions. Thank you.
Emma, thank you. Good. So thanks for that, Emma. I just want to say this came to the place board in Logan last time, and the hospice is on the sort of crest of the wave. We had a bit of a gap, and now it's really grown. Very complimentary about itself. So sometimes things we do at system jar in place. This absolutely complements what we're doing. So just compliments. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We co-opted the hospice onto the place board now, recognising that why the system working. Just a couple of things from me. So I keep talking about virtual wards and we're pushing them on now. We've got 100 virtual wards and we're doing heart failure patients, we're doing cardiac patients. The chief exec from the hospice said, well, I've got 640 patients under my hospice at home scheme. That's exactly the same. The hospice has been doing this for ages. True. So actually it's just words, isn't it? Virtual wards, hospice at home, it's the same thing. Yeah. So actually there's a lot we can learn from the sector in terms of how they work. Just in terms of the risk register at place, so just to reiterate the more negative side of it, we do have an issue with consultant workforce into how the hospital and the hospices work together. And we do have a big issue around funding, and so that's been exacerbated by the national insurance issue. So they are the 2 key risks around this.
And we're well designed on those, and we're having some discussion about virtual wards, aren't we, in terms of how we can look into that. So thanks, Chris.
Well, Leslie, Kathy, and then Leslie.
Thanks. So, Louise. I really welcome the opportunity to have a discussion about this whole area because it's sadly neglected. And I think as a person who spent 15 years before I finished substantive role working with older people, this is so much of the conversation that needs to go on. And I think what we need to understand is that for a lot of families, they don't want to talk about death and dying, and a lot of older people in particular always say, I do want to talk about it, I do want to sort it out. So I think it's really, really important that we're stimulating the opportunity to have that conversation and for people to make their wishes known. And I appreciate this is not just about older people, there's lots of dimensions to this. I think the other thing for me then is reading the strategy. Didn't feel the voluntary community sector coming through strongly in this, so I welcome an idea where that's at and where there are opportunities for us to work with those organisations like AGKs and others who are working with those cohorts of people that do want to have that conversation, and how do we embed that and make them able to pass on information about what's available and how you make that advanced planning and that sort of stuff. But also connect people in where they need to the clinical support. So I think that's really important. And then my second point is, I think the strategy is great, Louise, but I wonder, it's quite dense and it's quite health servicing when you read it. And I just wonder whether there's an opportunity to actually do a sort of more straightforward version to share with our public, because I think that's helpful as well for us to be seen in that leadership role, but for people to see quite clearly what are the issues and what are the plans, and in quite a simple way. Don't have to be hard, is it? So they're my 2 points. Thank you.
Let's go. Kathy and then she, then we can come back.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of really welcome this, and I think it's a really brilliant start and point to a huge, huge piece of work. And I've worked in oncology and palliative care for most of my clinical career. That kind of need for this is huge beyond cancer and cancer or and actually hospices are already part of that palliative care delivery. I'd be kind of really interested in understanding if we go forward, kind of the work that we're going to be doing around some of those workforce challenges, because I've been cared for 2 parents at home end of life. That's where families really struggle, and that's where people then flip back into hospital, because actually it's that wraparound support, that urgent intervention around symptom and control management that leaves people feeling really, really vulnerable. And I've been really keen to share some of the kind of learning, which will be national learning recommendations that's coming out of one of the patient reviews that I'm involved with at the moment, because there's a kind of real challenge around emerging bereavement, and that's being getting people ready for that, but also how organisations then support people properly in that space. So as we get that kind of regional and national learning, I'll kind of share that with you. It's connected to PEDS, but actually I think that the themes will be the same for kind of those in CYP and adult.
Thank you.
I just want to echo some of the points that Chris made. It's absolutely brilliant to have a Rotherham Hospice at the Place partnership and embedding that strategy and their own strategy as well. But alongside that, I met with the Rotherham Hospice around equity and access around end of life care. Absolutely blown away about what they're doing in terms of inclusivity, in terms of how they're supporting families with patients that are in hospice care. And I think it's just kind of picking up on your point, Kathy, a little bit about learning. And Chris's point about learning from hospices, because it absolutely blew me away, some of the stuff that the Rotherham Hospice is doing, particularly around health inequality, equity and access. One of the people that work there, who's their lead for equity and diversity, they had a member of the community who was sadly passed away at the hospice, and this was the first time from the racialised community, they supported 49 members visiting a single patient in that hospice care, which was absolutely unheard of. I was completely blown away by it. But the reason why it resonated with me so much is that from some of our minoritized communities, the whole concept of death, saying goodbye, it's not just an immediate family thing, it's a community thing. And that for some of our acute providers is a real issue. How do you have 49 people come on board, say goodbye? You don't. And so I think there's a whole host of learning that we can do from, but it's how do we kind of embed that learning, how to spread it across the system.
I think that's what I'm really important.
I think Ben might think this.
Okay, Ben, sorry, go on.
Yeah, firstly, just big thanks to Louise and Emma for intervening a little bit late, such voices around this, and just really I think that's really important. I think Leslie's point around actually having an easy reading version of what we want to achieve from this for the public is really important. I think that section pre-death really have people have better outcomes. Clinical need and care need in those that are followed up, as well as the person dying. Death when it's done right. That's the service is great. Death in a hell of a lot of other places where all of that support and all of that is hospital. So unnecessarily.
Moira.
Thank you. Just very quickly, great document. Thank you. Just linking back to where we started today around production, I'm just wondering, in terms of implementing this strategy, how we're going to embed co-production into it. I know the governance structure shows different groups that are working on, but I mean, it is clearly something that everybody said affects us all, and we need to co-produce from the outset, really. So it leads also to the next point about having a version of the strategy that's as accessible as possible to everybody, really.
I think the strategy is great. My even better if point is that there is so much work we could do in the space about making end of life more clinically and cost effective. It's a question about the priorities within the priorities, really. About it feels like there's a real appetite for multi-agency working about trying to ensure that people aren't finishing up unnecessarily in a general and acute bed to die, which candidly, a lot of our personal experiences is not what we would wish for any of our relatives. But it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to do it well. And I was just wondering around, of all the priorities that we've got for 2025, if we were going to put them in a sequence about the things that would have most impact, what would be most celebratory about if we were looking at it in June and gone, we've managed to land that? It just feels like there's so much work to do in this space that will make people's experience, the clinical cost effectiveness of care better. I couldn't quite get a sense from the priorities for 2025 about these will resolutely make an enormous difference in terms of the care we offer. And candidly, a very substandard and high cost service when this is done badly in a general and acute bed. So how are we going to, what are the priorities within the priorities is what it left me with.
I think, I mean, the main one is around auditing advanced care planning, because actually, you know, we've got so many percentage of our population with an advanced care plan, but actually when it comes to it, how many of them actually, so that'll be the key one for us, and it'll be across the 4 places. But Louise will probably have to, sorry Louise.
I've got lots of responses to everything you said. So the easiest one, I suppose, is the co-production one. Yesterday, I emailed our co-production kind of champion who goes on board and said, "We're doing a website. Can you tell me what you want? We're doing advanced care planning. Can I share you with the advanced care plan that will come up?" So this is live. We've already heard and spoken with Lucy about going out to the public to say when we're wanting a website, give us the top 3 things that's coming out. I've spoken with Lucy Davidson, and we've got a little bit of a plan of doing this. Share your stories, going out during Dying Matters Week and sharing key messages to the public, but also you come back and tell us what your experiences are as well, because the experiences that we're hearing go to each board, and at each board we hear stories that are good and bad about what we're experiencing, and that can help fuel a little bit of the conversation that you had this morning. It's that similar to what we get at the board. So co-production is key, and it is, you know, part of the essence of what we're doing, and, you know, experience in that is kind of just on that one. In terms of the voluntary sector, the key things is I have linked in with Karen Smith, so the connections are there. What I would say is that we're building lots of good foundations, but I think for me the message is, who else should we be talking to within the organisation to raise it as a profile? So like with emergency and elective care, people aren't talking to me about emergency care, but actually I know if we can get prevention right, we can stop people going to ED. So that's the kind of thing. So talk to me and I can talk to them, and we can get, I've got 30 clinicians I'm meeting on a bi-monthly basis, come to that and hear about people's experiences and the clinicians' experience of palliative and life care across the region. And we can use them not only to inform the work that we're doing, but inform the work that is going across the patch as well. So the links are there. What we're doing and what we have 6 months is build those foundations. We're building our data. We are building, we're building the foundations. We want to know what's having an impact and therefore what is making a difference. Some of the key little initiatives are what's happening at place, recognising there are different place models there. That is valid. That is the model in which we're working in. What are the opportunities to do things across? So Children and Children and People is a small area, so therefore can maximise the opportunity. But where there are little differences and pockets of expertise or experience that are happening, what's the impact? And can we share that to help perform elsewhere? In terms of the voluntary sector, one of the things it does talk about in the strategy about having champions, and I would see that champions as being one of the areas that the voluntary sector can offer. We do know that they are out there, and there are people working day in, day out with people who are towards the end of their lives, and people that are caring for them in whatever capacity. I would say that is an area that needs further exploration and probably needs more work and consideration. And that is going beyond that. At the moment, I suppose the conversations are more medicalised because that's the bit that we're focused on initially. It is a 4-year plan, but I would definitely see that as something. We are talking to hospices, obviously they are charitable services primarily across South Yorkshire, but not in all regions. So we've got key people, but it's how we broaden that conversation, and that is something we need to take forward. In terms of the workforce challenges, we are talking to NHS England about those. They are aware of the number of consultants that we have in South Yorkshire, and they are aware of when those consultants are retiring in the next 2 to 4 years. We also have the same intelligence that tells us that there are different models happening across the whole areas, and that there are new ways of working with nurse prescribers and different ways of working into the community. So I think the hospice thing is about not just what happens in hospices, but actually how do they spread that knowledge across the whole of the area as well, working with our primary care colleagues. The link, so yeah, and there is also a national, so Sam Keramatang works as a consultant in Sheffield. He's also the regional lead for NHS England. That is, workforce is one of the challenges that we are discussing on a regular basis with NHS England. There is also an NHS England regional workforce group as well that he's chairing and that we are part of. So the conversations are happening. We can't pluck new consultants out of in the air, but what we're trying to do is understand the risk and try and mitigate that along the way. Working and recognising that when we're putting out advert recruitment, it then means that there's capacity somewhere else. And we do get people bouncing around the system locally as well. So we are abreast of that. But I can't do what we're doing is probably the best we can now, but can we take that and continue to drive that? Bereavement and having the conversation, yeah, without a doubt. There's lots of pockets of really good work, particularly in Sheffield around our compassionate Sheffield approach. And that supposedly it's really into that bereavement needs assessment that's currently going on. It's being led by Barnsley City Council and public health team there, supported by Ben. And the outcome of that, I think, will certainly make some of those recommendations on how to increase and awareness of how to have that conversation. Because it's not just those specialist services. We do need those. There is a gap. There aren't any there. But it's about how does the voluntary sector help support that conversation, and how do we equip professionals at whatever level to have that conversation and make it everyone's business. So I suppose the key thing is we've got the foundations there. How do we make it everyone's business, not just mine and Emma's? And that's the kind of thing. So at all levels, whatever you're working on, the pathway starts with prevention, but actually ends with prevention as well. And that's the palliative care. So is there as much focus on the end as what there is at the beginning? Because yes, we want to increase how long people live for, reduce and mitigate all those health conditions along the way. But at the point where someone dies, they do need support, and there's lots of
expertise across our organisation, and we are tapping into everywhere else across the country to try and focus on that. I think that's all the questions. We can, yeah, I'm talking a lot. Sorry. Yeah, we can do a straightforward version. I will talk to our comms colleagues on that.
Really helpful this conversation. But thank you. See you. Clearly, there's an issue for all of us. I will pick this up in all our work. You're right. This could be everything from supporting people at home, admissions to A&E. This covers all of our areas, doesn't it? And needs looking at that way. Thank you. Great to you. Emma, thank you. Hybrid closed loop item 16. David.
Yeah, I'll move this on then. So in September, I brought people on diabetes. I hybrid closed loops in that presentation, and sometimes referred to as artificial pancreas. Really, this has the opportunity to revolutionise medical care, impact greatly on patient experience, and improve the outcomes of people with type 1 diabetes. The reason why I spoke to the board today is because there's such clinical significance and the resources requirements to fully implement. So I welcome back Lisa. We've got Richard Crosby from Medicines Optimisation, and obviously Jeffrey's going to input as well. So Lisa, can I bring you in, please?
Yeah, thank you. So you remember that last summer we brought a paper to board highlighting the big and increasing challenges of diabetes to the health of people in South Yorkshire. Managing type 1 diabetes is particularly complex, expensive, and also one of the most challenging long-term conditions for people and their families to self-manage. NICE approved the technology appraisal for the use of hybrid closed loops a year ago, and today we're asking for board's approval for our approach to implementation, particularly the phasing across the 5-year implementation period. The hybrid closed loop is a bit of software that connects continuous blood glucose monitoring to subcutaneous infusion of insulin, and it automatically adjusts the dose of baseline insulin. So as David said, this really is a very major advance in the management of type 1 diabetes. It decreases the mental burden for patients and also for their carers, and the marked improvements that occur in blood glucose will help to decrease acute complications such as hypoglycemic episodes and medium to longer term complications such as diabetic eye disease, renal failure and cardiovascular disease. Patients are describing this as being life-changing, not only improving quality of life and life expectancy, but it would also reduce NHS demand and also social care demand. Health inequalities will be helped, as we know that people with type 1 diabetes who live in the more deprived areas and are of certain ethnic minority backgrounds are more likely to have poor blood glucose control and have the most to gain from using HCL. Clinicians are also reporting that young people are now finding it easier to stay in education, that some people who've been unable to work are considering going back to work, and that carers are finding new freedoms. We've got case histories of people who've been looking after their children with learning disabilities and type 1 diabetes, who for the first time in 15 years have managed to go out, leaving the person at home. So when we took this to the ICB executive, Gavin made the point that implementation of this could be seen as an investment, and that would not only benefit patients but also the wider system and the economy. As it's a technology appraisal, we do have a legal obligation to implement hybrid closed loop. The supporting paper details the implementation steps that have been taken. We think that there's around about 7,000 people with type 1 diabetes in South Yorkshire. Not all of them are eligible for HCL, as there's certain NICE criteria. Assuming a 75% uptake, we think that there's about 3,300 people that should be offered HCL. Around a third of these have already commenced it, with over 80% of the under 18s having started HCL, which really is a major achievement for our paediatric diabetes services. Given the complexity and the amount of clinical support that a patient needs when they start HCL, NHS England and NICE have agreed a 5-year implementation period. You'll see that within the paper we've agreed with the Trust Diabetes clinical leads which groups of patients will have the greatest needs and will benefit most from starting HCL first. These are in line with the NHS England's HCL implementation plan priorities. Given the numbers of patients in that group, it's likely to take us about 12 months or so to cover that group. As rollout progresses, we'll regularly review the priority groups with the clinical leads. The rates of starts that we've set out in the paper would lead to us having a 77% uptake rate by the end of year 4, which then gives us a bit of leeway in the final year of implementation. Patients' expectations for this are very high, and it's going to be quite challenging for the clinicians to manage expectations across the 5-year implementation period. Together with some people with type 1 diabetes, we've developed an FAQ for patients, and we're also doing communication and lunchtime webinars with primary care colleagues to increase their awareness and so that they can also have a greater understanding of the nature of the phased rollout and again help with patient expectations. In addition to patients who are eligible for hybrid closed loop, there will be other patients who are also eligible for continuous glucose monitoring. That is more difficult to estimate the actual numbers as we haven't got good detail around the number of patients with type 2 diabetes who would meet the NICE eligibility criteria, but we can expect to see some further growth in CGM use over the next few years. So I'll hand over to Jackie now.
Thank you. So the reason I'm here is on the downside of this, there is a significant financial resource associated with this implementation. And as Lisa said, that's the reason that NICE and the Department of Health agreed a 5-year implementation plan as opposed to the normal 3 months. So the cost of implementing both the hybrid closed loop and the expected increase in continuous glucose monitors is expected to increase from double from the 12.3 million that we spent in 23-24 up to 24 million that we are spending now. But for 24-25, we're estimating that actually the incremental cost for this current financial year is £5 million. And this was something that we didn't include as part of the financial planning for 24-25. So it's one of the significant expenses we're seeing for the year. So it is a real challenge in terms of balancing the projected impact in terms of the health outcomes against the immediate financial challenges that we have over the next year. NHS England have set out a system of partial reimbursement just for people starting on hybrid closed loop from April 24. But if I say, we're expecting to spend 5 million in this year, the cap that NHS England have put in place is 373k. So it's minuscule compared to what we're expecting to spend, which is why we've been doing the detailed work with the clinicians just about making sure that we are starting with those that will are expected to have the maximum amount of benefits. We are also working with the diabetes leads and meds optimisation colleagues to look at areas in diabetes care where we might be able to make other savings, either because we've now implemented the continuous glucose monitors, or because other care we might be able to identify some waste and offset some of this increasing expenditure. So it's not just rolling out something new, we're looking at the totality of the pathway. However, we do have some risks in terms of data quality capture, even trying to get that small amount of funding from NHS England, which require our providers to submit significant amounts of data. And we are struggling in terms of some of the systems and processes within providers to be able to make sure that we are doing that. The funding from NHS England is expected to ramp up over the next 5 years, so it's really important that we get those systems. So I think this paper is trying to balance out the requirement to make sure that we're implementing the opportunities in terms of people with diabetes, but trying to balance that about managing the financial consequences of that as well. So that's why myself and Lisa are working closely to make sure that we've got
Thank you. That's really helpful. David, do you want to add anything?
I don't think there's anything else to say. I think that's a good summary to end on, Jackie, and see we're trying to balance our legal responsibilities clinically, what's in the right, the right thing to do, but mindful of the financial circumstances that we will do.
And it was one of the financial pressures this year that we just didn't see coming, wasn't it? Was, don't you say 5 million?
Well, we kind of knew it was coming over the hill, but there was no funding source for it. So even if the economic appraisal works, which it does, and it's the right thing to do, it doesn't mean there's a revenue funding source available to fund it and get it all started. I mean, so I think there is something for us just about nice assessments of what's coming next, really. So weight loss, a whole range of things where we need to go. What's going to be our response? I think the gratifying thing about this piece of work is the engagement we've had with secondary care diabetes colleagues about how do we focus this work where it can have most impact. Because to be brutally frank, if I was stood there in front of a patient with nice guidance, I think it is very hard in that clinical interface to go, candidly, I'm not quite prioritising you yet. So given that we know the economic appraisal works, I think we've done quite well to get to the point we've got the agreed clinical protocol about how fast we can afford to go at this from a revenue funding source. Quite contradictory, because candidly nice would say, well, there's huge benefits there where would that we could ship it out, but unfortunately, it was one of the innovation stories, wasn't it, Gavin, about the impact of this on children, particularly in school attendance and the broader dynamics of the economic assessment, but that it doesn't make it affordable within the NHS silo. But it's a good piece of work.
Two or three things. One is I think we have to support this. We have no option. The second thing is there is a broad issue for us generally about how do we gain, even within health, the economic gain of the changes here. Because some of these economic gains will be in bed days and things like that. We are very poor at recording it, let alone at getting it back. Generally, I mean, it could be on a whole host of other things. Palliative care would be a good example. So there is something about our discipline for doing that has been very poor because, frankly, I don't know if you're in Sheffield teaching or Doncaster, other patients just fill the beds. That's just a very practical issue. So, in theory, we might well reduce, almost certainly will, the utilisation of the diabetic patients, type 1 diabetic patients, into secondary care. Isn't that great? Do we actually say, is there any income savings? Much more difficult to do. And that's something we found all the way through the NHS.
I think that that's important though. I mean, I think Lisa mentioned that there's something about